This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate what if Kid Naruto ran away with Orochimaru. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no more time, let's start the story.
After school, Naruto trudged home. For a 7-year-old like him, it was particularly exhausting. He had no choice but to continue, even if it was just barely, because of everything else. After entering his apartment, he proceeded down the narrow hallway that led to his bedroom. With a sigh, he closed his eyes and collapsed back onto the bed. Orochimaru fell from his hiding place on the ceiling. He was merely here to examine the one he desired. But with so much chakra, the Jinchuriki would be a great student. It was a great idea. Additionally, he might be doing the child a favor because no one wanted him around anyhow, which benefited him even more because it meant he would be simple to make into a fierce foe of the leaf. He called forth a snake, which immediately bit the blonde boy and said, "Sensei, you are a fool to leave him by himself. People like me can just take him away. Well, it's your loss. That should keep him unconscious for a while." Naruto's perspective, the first sensation he experienced upon awakening was a stinging sensation on his leg. He discovered 4 puncture marks on his left thigh after sitting up and moving the covers he was under. He wasn't dying, but it was clear that a snake had done it. Clearly, the poison had been eliminated. He started to survey the space. He was sitting in a rather spacious bed that measured roughly 6 feet by 8 feet. Since there were no windows and everything was illuminated by torches, it was clear that the room was underground. Before choosing to get out of bed, he sat there for nearly 30 minutes. He got to his feet a little unsteadily and went to a locked door. 3 more doors were present. A closet followed by a bathroom, for which he was extremely grateful, and finally, a locked door. There was a mirror on the wall, a table with some paper on it, a candle, and a chair in front of it. The closet also had multiple sets of clothes that appeared to be brand new. He made the decision to change into a slightly cleaner and more recent outfit. He went with the shirt and pants in azure blue. After changing, he sighed and lay back on the bed, wondering what he had been thrown into. At first, he thought it might have been one of the villagers, but then he noticed that the clothes in the bathroom were in perfect condition and functioning. It hadn't been one of the villagers, and the bed was much more comfortable than the one he had at home. He quickly fell back asleep, not realizing that someone had entered the room. After 3 hours, groggily, Naruto sat up. He was still a little worn out, presumably from the poison. A voice in the corner said, "So you've finally woken up. Who are you?" "I am Kabuto Yakushi. I've been asked by your father to watch you." "My father? Lord Orochimaru. Orochimaru. That name. I think I've heard it before. Probably when you were in the academy. They have an odd curriculum there. It jumps a lot. One moment you'll be learning about 100 years ago, and then you'll come all the way to 10 years ago, but I guess it's hard to do it any other way. There are lessons that must be learned from history only at certain times. I know who Orochimaru is. He's a village traitor. Why the heck is he saying he's my dad? He saved you from that place. Think about it. They have tried multiple times to kill you, and you're only an innocent child. But here, with us, you can have people all around you that appreciate you, and all of your hard work. But, I was going to be Hokage. I was going to make them all respect me if I had to. But you see, they wouldn't have allowed that. They hate you, but here, you'll have friends. But I did have friends, Iruka-sensei, Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, Shino, and Hinata, and I even talked together once in a while." Kabuto asked him, omitting the fact that Iruka was an orphan, "Do you think they should? Their parents, I'm sure, have told them multiple times not to associate with you. They might get in trouble. You wouldn't want that, would you?" Are you hungry?" Kabuto called out abruptly. Naruto gave a nod. "What would you like?" "Ramen," Kabuto exclaimed as he got to his feet. "Ramen it is." Hiruzen gave a sorrowful sigh. 3 days had passed and Naruto was still nowhere to be found. The majority of the village was discussing it, and to his dismay, far too many people were celebrating. Not just 12, perhaps a few more. Additionally, he had to inform Jiraiya, of course. "So what's the celebration about?" Jiraiya asked jokingly as he walked through the window into his office. "Something's happened. It's about Naruto." "What?" Jiraiya inquired, his humor gone. 3 days ago he was kidnapped. I immediately sent the Anbu, and Inuzuka I could trust after them, though that was very few, but all signs point to What? All signs point to what? All signs point to Orochimaru being his kidnapper. But what would Orochimaru want with him? He cried, his alarm at this new information having increased significantly. I don't know, the nine tails inside of him maybe. I should have finished the job when I had the chance. This wouldn't be happening now if I had. Hiruzen replied. You want me to go look for him? Yes, in a way. You see, I want you to keep an ear out for anything that might lead us to him. I don't even want to think what might be happening. I don't either. I'm scared, sensei, for the boy, or is it being pummeled by his parents in the afterlife? Both. Well, I guess we can only hope for the best. Jiraiya left the village the same way he had come, checked into a hotel, and then left 10 minutes later, saying, finding info on Orochimaru is now my top priority. I will find Naruto. He's my godson and my responsibility after all. Kabuto informed Naruto that the snake that had bitten him had not used poison but rather a sedative to keep him asleep, which would only wear off with time. Naruto then lay down to continue sleeping. After being greatly amused by the child's ability to eat so much, the silver-haired boy eventually stopped after about 20 bowls. The teenager eventually departed, leaving Naruto on his own. Orochimaru inquired, Kabuto, how is our newest addition doing? He's torn. It might take a bit of tampering with his memory to get him to pledge allegiance with us, but not too much. I mostly just have to remove some people from his mind. Out of sight, out of mind, and he's as good as ours. Good, good. Now, you should go back. The time your mission was assigned to should be up soon. I have 2 days to return. I'll be fine. Yes, you have 2 weeks to return here, and while you're gone I think I'll go and see him. Jiraiya let out a sigh. A trail led all the way to the forest. He must have met with an accomplice to hide any evidence. Dang it, Orochimaru, he cried. Orochimaru sat in the room's lone chair and said, well, Naruto, it's nice to meet you, unless the bed is included. Who are you? I'm Orochimaru, but I would rather father or something close to it since I've adopted you. You'll have to earn that title. Yes, yes, it only seems fair. Why did you take me away from home? Because, it's better for you here. No one here will hurt you. You will not only be acknowledged, but also cared for. And when you're old enough, you'll be able to become a ninja. But, my friends are going to worry about me. And the old man. And Dot and I was already going to be a ninja. I was going to be Hokage. Well, why don't you just think about it? But I don't want to think about it. I want to go home. Ah, but you are home. At least in my eyes. Orochimaru sighed, growing impatient. But home. To me. Is Konoha. With my friends, he said. Look, if in 2 weeks you still don't want to stay here, we'll send you home. Of course, if you want to stay here you're free to. Also, you're welcome to leave the room. But the doors are locked. I'll leave them unlocked. Just don't get in anyone's way. Orochimaru grinned and said, Fine. I agree to those terms. He knew he could do it. It had just taken some patience. He got up from the chair and walked out of the room, frightening his ninja as he went by with that eerie smirk still on his face. Orochimaru said, his unsettling smirk still present, Uraya, I want you to watch over the child, make sure he doesn't get into trouble, and if he does keep people from scaring him, I want our best foot forward. She said, yes, Lord Orochimaru, and then she walked out on the ceiling down the hall. Walking down the hallway, Naruto already disliked this place because it was too dark and he wished there had been some sunlight. He also really wanted to see trees, and everyone he saw appeared to be ghosts, most likely due to the lack of sunlight. Oh, and did someone mention that he was lost? Not in my opinion. He was lost, indeed. She was Uraya Kamichi, 5 feet 7 inches, about 12 years old, with green eyes, tawny brown hair to the waist, ninja boots, sleek gray pants, a sleeveless light gray shirt, dull yellow cloth tied around the neck, a sound headband holding her hair back, and bloody crimson nails. She decided to show up at random around the corner after noticing the boy was lost. She walked with grace, allowing the blonde boy to bump into her and catching him before he hit the floor. Oh, sorry, I hadn't seen you there, he replied. It's all right. Are you lost or something? Well, actually, yay. Do you know how to get back to my room by chance? She took hold of his hand and led him through the numerous hallways, saying, yes, I do. Come with me. Would you like me to see if I can take you out for a walk later? she asked Naruto after they finally stopped in front of the door and she opened it, revealing his room. He exclaimed, like above ground in the light? If that's what you want, and well if your father says it's alright. He inquired, are there a lot of trees around? Yes, after a bit of walking there are many trees around. I'll have to see if we can go out for a while. With a sigh, Hiruzen realized that he was going to die in the afterlife at this rate and that he deserved it all because he had allowed Naruto to be attacked, mistreated, and abducted. However, he feared that he would never be able to locate the unfortunate child again. With a sigh, he got up, wrote a note, and placed it on the door for the next person to enter his office. Then he leapt out the window after removing his robes to reveal his armor. About 10 minutes later, Uraya smiled and came back. The entire village was connected, even though only Otto Nin was aware of that small detail. The blonde boy had that effect on everyone he met, really. It wasn't that there were many people to meet. Most of them were constantly on missions to keep purchasing more food and weapons. Deep underground, there were crawl spaces that only the proper sound-based jutsu could open. They decided to utilize the crawl spaces, which also led to their kitchens and pantries, and it turned out to be a good idea. Well, inquired Naruto. 4 things. First of all, I've been assigned the task of watching you, switching out with Kabuto when he's here. Second, you have to have dinner with Lord Orochimaru. And the last 2 your father will explain during dinner. That title should not be used until he has earned it, Naruto muttered. I see. Well, I won't use it I guess, at least not yet. Ah. Naruto, how are you feeling, homesick? Not much of an answer but I guess I'll have to work with it. I heard you like ramen so I had some made. But you aren't going to eat just ramen, it's not healthy, you'll have to eat some fruits and vegetables as well. Naruto managed to stammer out, what, but. Ramen. Orochimaru, however, disregarded him and resumed his conversation. Tomorrow I would like to train you for a while, then after training Uraya is allowed to take you out for a walk, above ground like you want but you will lose that privilege if you try to escape. He continued. The tone caused Naruto to shift uneasily. I never go back on my word. I promised I would stay here for 2 weeks, so I will. Good. So how were your academy grades looking? After giving it some thought, Naruto concluded that while he wasn't doing badly, it wasn't good either. Academically, he was terrible, his reading and writing abilities were also terrible. His chakra control was terrible, and even the most basic of his jutsu was difficult for him to perform. However, it wasn't entirely his fault. He might have done a little more reading, but his physical training took a lot of time and effort, and he only saw modest results, so he tended to focus more on his physical training than his mental preparation. In addition, he lacked the most crucial skill for reading books: the ability to read. Well, to put it simply, they sucked. That will be worked on. What was your biggest trouble? Pretty much everything. When Hiruzen discovered Jiraiya, he exhaled with relief. Sensei, what are you doing away from your paperwork? I'm out here to help you for a few days. I know Orochimaru. He would be somewhere we wouldn't expect him to be. Like underground? Possibly. Why did you instantly think of underground? One of my spies found an underground village. It was very small, maybe 1/100th of Konoha, but it was a village. I see. Was there anyone there? No, by the time he had made it in it was abandoned. Somehow they all got out, and maybe we can use that to try to find Orochimaru, and probably Naruto. So there were people there, right before he entered. Yes. He must have been seen or something. But my point is, they got out without being seen, they must have had an escape route, and there might be a trail there. I've spent all day looking around the place. What if there are more? Maybe instead we should be scouring the area for more underground villages, or at least their escape route. I'd already thought of that. I even looked in every nook and cranny of that forest, but I didn't find anything. They were not making any progress, Hiruzen sighed. Uraya was standing with her back against the wall. Naruto really wanted her to stay, but she would have left a few minutes ago. She repressed a laugh at the idea of Orochimaru giving in to a puppy dog look, but she eventually gave in after seeing one that made her question whether or not even Orochimaru could stand up. You look like a puppy dog. When Naruto started snoring, she started to leave and slowly made her way out of the room. She sighed and made the decision to go to bed after the door was finally closed. Naruto took a seat. Overnight, an alarm clock with the time 7 a.m. had mysteriously appeared next to his bed. He got out of bed and went to get dressed by getting some clothes from the closet. He went with his old clothes because they were already in fairly poor condition and allowed for good mobility. When Araya opened the door and stepped inside, he gave a little start. She handed the young boy a weapons holster and said, "Here, these are for you. Lord Orochimaru is going to be busy for another 15 minutes and wants you to practice with them." A little awkwardly, he caught it and peered inside, his eyes widening at the superior quality of the material. He remarked, "These are really nice." She took his hand and led him down the hall, saying, "Yay. Well, come on, let's get to where you can practice." After a few minutes and around 100 corners, none of which Naruto could recall, they came to a large forest area with a large glass window at the top that let in enough light for the plants to grow. Trees, bushes, moss, fruit trees, berry plants, and other vegetation were all present. Seeing something like that in an underground fortress was incredible. As Araya continued to advance him, he gazed around him in awe. They finally came to a halt. She grabbed a bottle of spray paint and applied a gold dot in the center, followed by a blue and red ring. Then she pulled out a paintbrush and added a small black dot in the center of the gold dot. "This is the tree you'll be aiming at." She waved her hand in front of the paint to speed up its drying process and said, "You have to try and hit the gold dot. That's your goal for now." He uttered, "All right. Better move your hand." When Araya took a few steps back, Naruto hurled a shuriken, which struck the target's red area despite grazing the blue paint. He threw again, a few centimeters closer this time. Araya clapped slightly and said, "Better, but you still have a long way to go." "I can do better." In an unseen motion, Naruto grabbed another shuriken and smacked it into the black dot, saying, "Try to. It's good." "Interesting," said a purring voice behind them. "You aim better when you modify the movement, and put more speed behind it," he stated. A slight chill ran down Naruto's spine. "Araya, you can go for now. Come back in about an hour and a half." She said, "Yes, Lord Orochimaru," and walked away. Then Orochimaru moved forward. "Take out a shuriken. I want you to show me exactly how you throw it." He took one out and made the motion, landing it precisely on the spike of the previous one. "Oh, okay," he said. Naruto made the motion slowly. "Slower. Good, HN. So, now what can I teach you?" "I know, let's start with chakra control." After an hour. "Good. That's so much better now, let's try the clone again." "Can we take a break? Only half an hour left, and then you can go for your walk." "All right. Good, now I want one clone." He sighed and said, "Okay, okay." After 30 minutes. When Araya returned precisely 1.5 hours later, Naruto was unconscious and Orochimaru was waiting. "Take him back to his room. You can take him for a walk later." Araya said, "Why? Yes, Lord Orochimaru," as she picked Naruto up. "Oh, and take him as far as he wants on that walk, so long as it's the opposite direction from that town. I've heard some people I used to know are searching for him." "May I ask who is looking?" His words were bitter. "My old sensei, Hiruzen Sarutobi and Jiraiya. My old teammate," he said. Araya walked away, ingraining that knowledge into her memory and retaining every detail about the two so she would be aware if she happened to run into them. Fortunately, it was fairly dark, so Naruto's eyes didn't have to adjust too much when he woke up with somewhat blurry vision. His vision improved at last, and he caught Araya's eyes out of the darkness. "Araya?" he interrogated. She began and leapt from her wall, sitting position, where she had dozed off. "You're awake. Did you still want to go for that walk?" she inquired. Naruto exclaimed, "Yay," as he got out of bed and put on his clothes. Araya chuckled softly at his enthusiasm and vigor. "You don't have to rush, it'll still be light for a little over 3 hours. We have plenty of time to walk out a ways, then rest for a few minutes and come back." "I know, but I'm so excited to see the sun, and I mean actually see it, not have light coming through glass." Araya agreed, choosing not to engage in a conflict she didn't believe she could win. "All right. Well, now that you're ready, we can go." "Yay," he exclaimed with joy, eluding the young woman who was faintly smiling. Hey, I wonder when I last behaved so innocently." He's so happy, so energetic, and so Innocent. 3 or 4 years. Longer? She asked herself in a whisper. After running into someone, Naruto abruptly stopped. She recognized him as Inagu, one of her teammates. He appeared a little alarmed but did not seem to notice the 60-7-year-old colliding with him. For a brief moment, his eyes conveyed that he was now furious. Or else, was the threat that no one in Oto had to finish, and they all knew the standard punishment for failing a task given by Orochimaru. She could tell he was going to yell at the young boy, but she was able to signal him from behind so he wouldn't say anything. Fortunately, Kabuto was more understanding, in a sense. As Inagu said, "Hello." Even though there was a glimmer of rage in his eyes, he managed to make his voice sound friendly. He said, "You must be Naruto." His voice sounded pitifully weak as he said, "Yes. Sorry for knocking into you like that." Inagu's eyes appeared to melt with rage. "It's all right. I admittedly knocked into you too. I'm Inagu." Uraya now interrupted the discussion. "Hello Inagu. What's wrong? You look worried." "I have to report to Lord Orochimaru about something." "Okay, well. Naruto and I were just going for a walk, so we'll see you later." He said, "Okay," and turned to leave. "How do you know him?" "He's one of my teammates." He followed her down another 100 corridors and said, "Oh." When he finally saw light, he hurried forward, climbing a tree to get a better view of the sky. As he looked around from the top of the forest, he exclaimed, "Wow. This is a great view. Uraya, you should come up here and look. There's a bunch of birdies." He sat there, utterly content and grinning like a child, his hair ruffled slightly by the wind. Behind him, Uraya emerged and surveyed her surroundings. "You became accustomed to the darkness from spending all of your time underground, and you stopped thinking about the sky because it didn't matter because it was always dark there." But she felt somewhat liberated when she stood atop a tree and gazed at it. No one ever felt liberated underground. Instead, they felt as though they were being crushed or suffocated. In her ear, there was a chirp. "You're right, there are birds up here," she replied. After performing several hand seals and extending a finger, a bird hopped onto it, and she took a seat. "Look at this little bird." "Wow. Birdie," he cried, gazing at it with amazement. "How did you get it on your finger like that?" Her lips quirked into a small smile as she said, "Yes. This is my chance. If I explain to him how I got it on my finger like that, perhaps it will help him stay here. Because, in reality, even after a few days, I've really begun to like him around. I used a sound jutsu." "Oh." Uraya placed the small bird back on the tree branch where it had been. "Well, we should probably go. We have a while to take our walk, and then we have to get back, before it's dark, okay?" Naruto said, "Okay," and began to descend. After they descended, they headed east, and Uraya helped him ascend the precipitous slope that led to the summit of a cliff. After talking for a few hours and watching the land below as the sun went down, Uraya caved and looked at the stars at Naruto's insistence. He uttered the words, "half asleep. This has been the best day ever," as Uraya pulled him down from the precipice. "Well, maybe we'll have to go outside again, yay." The following week went smoothly. Uraya became closer every hour, and Naruto developed as a result of Orochimaru's daily training. Despite his happiness, he still didn't feel like he belonged. When Kabuto returned, he was still thinking about all of his friends who were back in Konoha. He still feels a connection to the people he knows from his hometown, so he doesn't hate it here, but he also doesn't like it. "Do you want me to start the memory rearrangement first? I believe that would be best. Send Uraya here in the meantime." "Yes, Lord Orochimaru." "Uraya, come here for a moment." "Yeah? Lord Orochimaru wishes to see you?" she said hesitantly. "Oh, okay," and then strode off in a hurried but not rushed manner. It was late, and Uraya had just been putting Naruto to sleep, so Kabuto now focused on him. Perfect, it'll make it all the easier. As Uraya made her way down the hall toward Orochimaru, she knelt in respect, not really liking Kabuto because, despite popular belief, not all Oto nin were as cold as ice, even though they appeared that way in battle. Kabuto was creepy, and his eyes were ice. "Uraya, we need to talk about the boy. How about him?" "Well." After removing the young child from the bed, Kabuto quickly left the room and proceeded to one of his laboratories. He remains overly devoted to his village. He is being held back there by his few friends. Kabuto will therefore forget about those individuals. He will be able to live here because the memories will be locked away. I was curious how you would feel about having him act as your little brother in a way. You intend to interfere with his thoughts? He looked into her eyes and saw that she wanted to protest, so he said, yes, or would you like him to go back to that despicable village forever? If you must, object it, and I'll hear what you want to say. However, isn't that going a little too far, Lord Orochimaru? He's only 7, so he's still a child. True, but that's the reason it must be done. Orochimaru pointed to the tall stack of files and said, if you'd like, you can read the copies of the incident reports. She took one look before nodding in agreement. Naruto sat up and gripped his head, which was throbbing and wouldn't go away for an unknown reason. Ow, from next to him, Kabuto remarked, you hit your head earlier, and it knocked you out, that's probably why you don't remember. Where is Ureya? Quietly, he inquired. She spent a week on a mission. Until she returns, I'll be looking after you. He sat back and said, then we've decided that she'll look after you until I return, and we can both be on missions. Also, it's been 2 weeks, now it's time for you to decide. Oh, he sat thinking, remembering that he had no one and that, given the condition of his apartment, he had nothing valuable. So, what have you made up your mind? We'll leave you outside the gates with no recollection of what happened here, and I'll just have to tell Lord Orochimaru if you wish to return to the small village. Alternatively, you can remain with us, and we'll take excellent care of you. I've given it some thought, and I want to stay. People here don't despise me for being here. They respect me and my abilities. That's what I want. I detest unjustified hatred. All right, so I fixed the bruise on your head. Would you like to go train? Come on, after 2 years. Hey, Dad, tell me why you wear makeup. What are you saying? Is that eyeshadow purple? And what's the deal with the face mask and why do you have girly looking clothes in your closet? Orochimaru didn't feel the need to reveal such a significant secret as his immortality to a 9-year-old, and he was growing increasingly irritated with the questions. Naruto, I want you to go to your room, or stop asking me these ridiculous questions. Yes, Dad, he said, calming down while he awaited the 2 ninjas who desired to join the village. After 3 years, he was completely black, from head to foot, and everything but his eyes were invisible in the clothes and the cloak he wore. Even his eyes seemed to have turned ice blue instead of their cheery sky blue. Naruto dropped down from the perch he'd taken on the bridge, and the fighting stopped. He was unrecognizable even to Kakashi, Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Sakura, though none of them had really looked at him. Haku, Zabuza, get out. We'll have to send you somewhere else because you can't defeat them. After closing their eyes and considering the icy, slightly feminine voice, Haku and Zabuza finally confirmed that it was Naruto and departed with him. Kakashi stood there trying to feel the chakra signature with his senses. He had only tasted it and recognized it to a small extent, but it was too late, they were too far away. Tazuna resumed his work, hoping that they were safe now, but a presence appeared behind him, and before he could do anything, he grabbed the boy in the black clothing and pulled him away. However, Zabuza and Haku were now pursuing the genin, so he took him by the shirt and carried him to the genin. Sakura and Sasuke watching him while he and Shikamaru took the front lines. After making the required hand signals and slamming his hand down on the thin beam he was balancing on, Naruto was now beneath the bridge, keeping them occupied with his shadow clone. Come on. He nodded, and a tiny snake materialized. It slithered up the beam and onto the bridge without anyone noticing, and by the time Tazuna felt it bite his wrist, it was too late. Naruto had summoned one of the deadliest snakes he could summon, and he knew that the bridge builder would be dead by the time Zabuza and Haku were safe in 2 short minutes. After a day. Next time, you make a point, Naruto. After a long day of running away from their assignment, Haku said, panting, not Zabuza, no offense to him, but he's not got any tactical skills at all. Zabuza glared angrily at the remark. 3 years prior to, a man and a young girl roughly Naruto's age entered, accompanied by Ureya, Inagu, and Michiru, their final teammate. I am Zabuza Momochi, and this is my pupil, Haku, the man said, kneeling in front of Orochimaru. We want to be with you in your community. Is that correct? As long as they passed the test, Naruto remained seated in the same spot, silent and stoic. At least on the outside, but on the inside, he was cheering that he finally had someone his age around. If that's true, you won't mind being searched and striped of anything that might resemble any sort of way of communication. Not at all, Zabuza replied, and although Haku appeared a little uneasy, she remained silent. Okay. Then, I'll let you live in our village, however, you will be punished if you ever waver in your loyalty. Naruto sat there trying to appear completely composed, but he was on the verge of losing it because he was celebrating the fact that he would finally have a person his own age who wouldn't reject him. Right now. I want to make sure Junin doesn't follow us, so let's go. I didn't like that Sharingan he had, and he might be dangerous. Haku said, alright, your point. Zabuza had to concur with that choice because he lacked a strong sense of direction and would have long since vanished from the world if it weren't for Haku. Alright, let's get going. As she leapt into the trees, the blonde exclaimed. Zabuza whispered, sheesh, you don't have to yell, kid. Go. Momochi. He gave the order. Yes sir, I need a better sense of it, but they're probably long gone by now. Dang it. Kakashi sighed. This wasn't good, their first C rank, and they had failed it. Sakura and Sasuke needed more training. Shikamaru had been doing well, but his students, well, they kind of made him feel ashamed. And then there was the question of who the black-clad ninja was. The next base down the line had, as usual, very different entrances. The last one had a simple hole in the ground with a giant boulder over it, and the next one. Fortunately, everyone always managed to escape because they all knew the right jutsu, or if it was the prisoners, they were taken by their guards. Naruto sat down on his new bed. Their base had been moved again, and it appeared that Jiraiya had been approaching him too closely. A flawlessly smooth door opened, and they walked in without making any noise. That tree right there, the blonde said, approaching it and tapping a piece of bark. Do you like it? Zabuza stated, it's a very interesting design. Thanks, I thought of it. Very good, I wonder where Kabuto has gone this time. Luckily though he should be back for the exam. Every shinobi in the village would participate in the exam, the talk of the village, in 2 months, and they were confident they could prevail because they had better forces in. I have to admit, I feel a small amount of pity for Suna, considering what we're going to do to them. I agree, but they had it coming, and maybe next time they won't be so naive as to trust someone just because they look like someone they think they can trust. I mean, they're a shinobi village for goodness sake. Haku responded. Humph, you've got that right. The two nodded and continued their conversation as Zabuza said, not that I don't enjoy listening to you chatting, but I'm going to go report. He then walked away. But I guess it's not really their fault. They think it's their cage, who would ever think to betray their leader, and the person that could have them killed. That's why this plan is so clever, Naruto said, nodding his agreement. With a sigh of exhaustion, Naruto reclined on the bed and raised his feet, letting himself slowly fall asleep. In the interim, as Team 7 walked into Hiruzen's office, he sighed. He slammed his head against his desk, much to their astonishment, and said, so that's how it went, without even trying to tone his voice with a question, knowing from their expressions that the mission had failed. Great, a new mound of paperwork to deal with. In addition to that, he halted, catching himself before he revealed an S-class secret to the genin. Kakashi, there's something we have to talk about, it's about him, the rest of you need to leave. Who is this, him, that you discuss with Kakashi all the time? As he always did when the old Hokage did this, Sasuke demanded. None of your business, Kakashi said, closing the door after shoving the 3 genin out. I've gotten word from Jiraiya, he found something that might confirm his suspicions. About Naruto, but oh my goodness, what did he discover? When he completed a test with a high score, I gave him this, and when he completed additional tests, I increased it. While looking through the most recent base, Jiraiya discovered it. He has him, but we're not sure under what circumstances. I am requesting permission to assist Master Jiraiya for a couple weeks, until the exams, at which point I want my team to enter. After failing this mission, yes, I am certain that they will survive, if nothing else, but it will provide them with combat experience that they will never obtain if they are forced to perform C and D ranks. They have completed more than the necessary 14 missions, and they need this. I see, well it's a good thing you told me now, because I was planning on having that meeting in 3 days. Fantastic. I'll be back in time for the tests, thanks. I'll probably come to help you and Jiraiya search in a few weeks, Just for a few days before I have more cursed paperwork to deal with. Hiruzen replied. At this rate, it doesn't look like you'll be done anytime soon, Kakashi said with a laugh. 3 genin poured into the room as the door slammed open. All right. Did you not hear all of that? Naruto awoke with a start when Araya knocked on his door, and he winced because he knew that she only knocked so forcefully when she was upset or anxious, and he suspected that she was upset because she had used hair dye instead of shampoo. Naruto. Now go out here with your butt. She yelled, nearly threatening to smash his door once more. Since he had no other way out this time, he considered his options and concluded that confronting her in a manly manner was the best course of action. For once. He called, coming, and tried not to look scared when he opened the door to see his older sister wearing a towel. Red-faced, and with bright red hair hanging down to her waist. I must admit, I was going for a more secluded red, but I think that fits you better. I love it, he said. I fully admit it, he said. I'm satisfied. Okay little brother, I've gotten my revenge, but now I need to know if this is permanent hair dye, she screamed, grabbing 3 kunai and throwing them. They caught his clothes and pinned him to the wall. She then took out 5 more and completed the pinning. No, it will be released in roughly 6 months. Na.ru.to. 6 months later. Hearing the sounds coming from his children's rooms, Orochimaru entered at that moment, observing Araya in a towel with tomato-red hair and Naruto pinned to the wall with a well-aimed kunai, all the while resisting the urge to smirk, moan, and laugh. He only said, I see, before turning around and returning to his throne to speak with Zabuza, who was waiting for him. The only person in the village with more than a bag's worth of belongings was Orochimaru, and he only had paperwork, but it was all hidden in a room off to the side of one of the escape tunnels. Naruto packed what little he had. No one ever had much, and they always went with them when they went on missions so that they could keep secretive about their operations. And he shouldered his bag, which contained 2 extra changes of clothes, thread, a needle, newly made weapons, a large number of concealed weapons, another black cloak, and other items he needed. Fortunately, he was able to use some of Araya's makeup while he was away, to cover up the whiskers when he was out in the open. She is taking a very long time, I'm already impatient, Naruto said. It's been 5 minutes, Naruto. On your way here, didn't you pass her room? Haku inquired. No, I've been trying to avoid her since I dyed her hair, I mean after that lecture, and then leaving me pinned to the wall for nearly a week. She walked up to them and said, You deserved it little brother. Her hair, which was still tomato red, was now short and only reached her shoulders. Her smile made their eyes widen. But, I've kind of taken a liking to this hair color, I've packed some more of it for when it starts to fade. Really, yes, in fact. I've become accustomed to the color, so I'll probably just wear a bandana to hide it, throughout the operation. All right. Kabuto pushed himself off the wall and said, Well, we should get moving. Yay, said Naruto. After 3 days, after being caught playing a practical joke on an ANBU, Konohamaru leapt over the fence and fled from Iruka. His teacher discovered him and attempted to bring him in for the lesson that day, but Udon and Moegi were also running. We'll never be caught. Iruka passed them by, missing their disappearance from the street and unable to sense their chakra, as Konohamaru sung while still running. They flipped a corner and fell into a manhole, hitting the bottom with a clunk. Where did those kids go? He muttered as he continued. The 3 children used chakra to scale the walls and return through the manhole before leaving to meet and converse with Team 7 and continue through the village until it hurts. After running into someone and landing back on his behind, Konohamaru uttered those words. Grabbing his scarf, a black-clad ninja said, Watch where you're going, kid, and dropped him to his feet. Who are you? Wait. You should not be in the village because you are clearly not from it and you are all wearing different headbands. Sakura uttered an accusing statement. Haku got up and said, In fact, Miss Pinky, we're allowed. We're here for the Chunin exams. After they all held up cards. Oh, I should have known then, I'm sorry, she replied. It's okay. Now, if you'll pardon us, our sensei is waiting for us at the hotel, and if we're late, she might become a little irate, Kabuto said, while Naruto remained silent. All right, I'm grateful. In an attempt to make up for Naruto's aloof demeanor, Haku said, We'll see you at the exams. The black-clad ninja left, ignoring the people around him but still moving with composure. "Hey you! What's your name? You are the one who ruined our mission." Sasuke growled, "I was talking to you," and yelled after him, but Naruto didn't even turn. Sasuke didn't exactly like being ignored, so he rushed towards Naruto with a fist ready to punch him until he was right behind his opponent. His hand was caught less than an inch from the back of Naruto's head, and he tried to punch him with his other fist, but that was also caught. His arms were moved, and Naruto flipped around, glaring at him with cold eyes. "I know, and I don't care," Naruto said, continuing to avoid turning to face him. He said, dropping Sasuke's hands and turning back around, "You should probably stop having tantrums every time someone ignores you if you want to continue being respected as the last Uchiha. Dang it, please just tell me your name." "No," he said, and Kabuto followed in the same cold manner. Haku passed by, giving them a somewhat pitying glance before trailing behind the black-clad ninja, and she deftly tucked some golden hair beneath the cloth he was wearing to cover himself. She whispered to him, "You missed that lil tuft again." He smiled sheepishly beneath his mask and said, "Oh, oops," but Sasuke was staring. He had noticed the gold tuft of hair, the blue eyes, and his voice, which was also familiar to the blonde fool. "Is it possible?" Quietly, he asked himself, and when Sakura turned around and went to the Hokage's office, he vanished. The bracelet on his desk had multiple charms, and Hiruzen could feel the chakra of its owner, slightly evil but mostly pure, as he stared at it sadly. He jumped up when his door flew open, and Sasuke came in, the secretary chasing after him, trying to stop him. "I must speak with you." He uttered those words. The old Hokage waved the secretary out and slid the bracelet back into the hidden drawer he kept it in. "Well, that's kind of obvious by the way you slammed my door open." "It's about Naruto." "What's happening, Naruto?" "I believe I know his location. Please, enlighten me." "He's here, in the village, for the exams." "How are you aware of this?" "I got to know him and his group." The same voice, if not a little more girly, the same hair, and the same eyes, albeit a little colder. "And it's not just that." "What else?" "Like Tora." Sasuke refused to mention the failed C rank and instead referred to the mission as it. "He also happens to be one that sabotaged it," he said curtly. Sasuke nodded and walked away, while Hiruzen hung his head and said, "Orochimaru, what have you done?" After pacing and leaving a worn spot on the carpet, Uraya simply replied, "I'll tell you over dinner." She then proceeded to her room and wore a hole in the carpet there, and at last, all three genin joined forces on her. "What's the matter?" Naruto inquired. Her response was, "Anagu," as she sat on the bed and looked down. His squad. Group, it was found out, and no one's sure who did and didn't escape. The genin team could now see why she was so agitated, given that her fiancé was missing and had proposed on her 17th birthday this year. All that was said was, "Oh," and at the time, that was all anyone could say about it. After 2 or 3 minutes, Kabuto finally left, followed by Haku a few minutes later, leaving Naruto and Uraya alone in the room. They both remained motionless and silent, communicating only by breathing. In the Hokage's office earlier, in response to his own letter, Jiraiya sent one, which Hiruzen read. "Are you certain? Are you certain that it's him? Are you absolutely certain? Although I had intended to come to the village for the 3rd section of the test, I may only come for the final 2 sections so that I can visit my spies in between. Is this not some cruel joke, then? Are you sure?" With a laugh, the elderly man took out a sheet of paper. "No, this isn't a mean joke. I'm fairly certain Naruto is here, but I want you to double-check because I'm too obvious to be caught, so I sincerely hope you can look into it. I'll see you when you arrive in the village, but before you do anything, stop by my office." The small red toad vanished after he handed Gamakichi the letter. Naruto finally left the room where he and Kabuto would be sharing it because he couldn't stand the silence. Kabuto was already asleep, but he opened one eye when his teammate came in. "Do you know his location?" did he ask. "No, nothing, but this better clear up before the end of the exams." "Really, can you picture bringing her home in that condition?" "Not really." With a sigh, Naruto started to take off the black cloth that was covering his head. "Totally unrelated, do you know when you'll get me that hair dye?" "No, I haven't got a clue." The blonde sighed once more, removing the black leg warmers he had been wearing to cover his ankles, followed by his boots and gloves. His skin was almost white underneath, and since everyone in his village looked the same, nobody gave a damn, including himself, but Kabuto still had the audacity to make a remark about it. "You look paler than last time I saw, and that was about a month ago." "All right. Whoop-de-doo." He threw away the rest of his black clothes and revealed a full set of thin azure clothes underneath, complete with a hood he could tighten around his face and, more importantly, his hair. He knew it stuck out like a sore thumb and needed to be covered because the golden color reflected so much light and never seemed to dull. At his teammate's response, Kabuto rolled over with a sly smile and said, "Very well, we will go to sleep. Good night, Naruto." "Good night, Kabuto." The blonde sighed and pulled his hood tight. A week later, "I'm going to kill you, little brat." "Ah, Haku, please save me." It's tempting, but it's too entertaining to stop." As they watched the mayhem from the wall, Kabuto remarked, "I concur." Naruto's pranking behavior was the catalyst for this whole situation. With the chair affixed to her back, how long do you think it will take her to catch him? "I'm not sure. It's difficult to tell. She's moving pretty well. I'll bet you everything in my wallet that she'll catch him in 5 minutes." "I'll go for that, within the next 3 minutes." Kabuto extended his hand to her and said, "Deal." They shook hands while they kept watching the mayhem. 4 minutes, I wager." Naruto continued to run as he spoke. After 4 minutes, "I triumph." "Ow. Booyah." "Oh. Get over it. Are you going to stop it already?" As Haku and Kabuto reluctantly emptied their wallets into his bag, which contained all of his money, Naruto yelled at Uraya and spoke smugly to them. Haku complained, "That was so not fair. I'm broke, that was all my money, period. I'm also much wealthier." "Indeed. Ramen." He cheered, almost jumping up, but the chair pinning him to the ground while Uraya kicked him a few times a minute he was stuck. "Can I go get ramen?" He questioned her while giving her the look that even Orochimaru gave into and that she readily gave into. With a resigned sigh, she said, "Okay." Naruto produced some alcohol swabs. He started to go for ramen, but before he could do so, Haku grabbed his shirt collar and threw him around. "Rub this on the glue and it'll come off." "You do recall the day, correct?" she inquired. No. We must arrive at the location where the first exam will be held. I was fortunate to wake everyone up early." What? That's today?" "Yes. Why wasn't I informed?" Naruto hurried out the door, grabbing his 2 teammates and dragging them, while Uraya was left to unglue herself from the chair. "Because you were too busy gluing your sister to her chair, and it was entertaining," Kabuto said. They reached the door and discovered a genin clustered around it, not that they gave a damn, but Kabuto declared, "It's the Uchiha boy. As long as he doesn't pass away, I don't really care right now," he said as he ascended the next set of stairs. "I just want to get to the exam, instead of watching these brats fight each other." Haku, who was once again wearing black, stared after the blonde and remarked, "Wow, he's got quite the grudge, doesn't he?" "Yes, he does." The 2 pursued him and discovered him waiting for them at the exam entrance, making it easier to manipulate. Trying not to think about her teammates' actions, Haku said, "Well, let's head in." "Yay," Naruto said, grabbing the handles and pulling open the double doors. "Humph, this looks like it'll be easy." As he had promised, the majority of them were either large, ignorant fools or extremely intelligent but physically weaker. They had primarily trained in one area, whereas Haku, Kabuto, and himself had trained in both, frequently reading while sparring, especially at this point. "Newbie, what did you say?" one of them shouted. He was fat, based on the half symbol he saw on his Iwa headband, and he looked kind of dumb, but he might do well on the written tests. "I meant what I said, and since this is my first time taking the test, you must be taking it for the second time or more. As I mentioned, it's easy." The boy charged at him, and Naruto easily dodged, assuming there was a no fighting rule and deciding it was best to just dodge it and not risk failing the first exam. "Why, you little pipsqueak," he yelled angrily as his team arrived behind him, not liking what they were hearing. Despite the fact that Naruto was only about 4'3", he was confident. "Ah, you're so pathetic, too bad too. I'd wanted a challenge out of this exam." That attracted the attention of a few other people. The competition may as well be diluted. "You're acting too arrogant now, kid, yay. Let's teach him a lesson." After 10 minutes, However, none of the genin that had attacked Naruto were visibly injured, so everything was okay. The majority of them were either A. lying on the ground knocked out, or B. backing off to tend to their teammates who had lost it due to a sort of brain freeze. The doors opened and a number of Leaf genin, including Team 7, entered. Naruto leapt up into the rafters that his teammates had previously used when they decided it was safer to leave the floor. "Ah, you're all a big bunch of losers," he said. "Next time don't retaliate to taunting." They observed as the small group of Leaf genin engaged in conversation, attracting the attention of the still, conscious people in the room. "Sasuke-kun, hurry up," grabbing him, Ino said. "Leave?" He pushed her away from him as he spoke. Shikamaru said, "Huh. I wonder who did that," from the small corner he and Choji and Kiba were in. "I don't want to know. Whoever it is might come after us next if we found out," Kiba replied. "Yay, I agree. It'd be too troublesome. Yay, I'm going to agree with the two of you." Kiba said, "So now I have to wonder if whoever it was is one of the ninja hiding in the rafters." Haku looked at the Inuzuka and said, "The boy could tell why. He heard someone cursing above him now. One of them up there was upset he'd found him out. Wait. That voice, I know it from somewhere. Wait, I know who it is. But then what is he doing up there, hiding from us?" "What? Kiba, did you say anything?" Choji inquired. "That voice says, no, it's not anything. I was just thinking about something. I'm probably just dreaming, so it can't be." "Alright then, dully, nearly asleep," Shikamaru said. It's probably too troublesome to deal with." Choji sat him down and allowed the younger boy to use his shoulder as a pillow. "Hey NK, why are you calling?" "Oh," he began to inquire as to why she had called him NK, but he soon realized that it was due to their location, and that if Konoha discovered that he had been alive all this time, he would be planning an attack on them. "Anyway, that little tuft has escaped once more, and I believe we should remain up here," she said, crouching down toward Naruto while tucking her hair back in and standing on the ceiling. "You know Haku, it's not going to stay there. If it comes out again we will have to cut it," Kabuto replied. "No. Why not?" Haku's question was. "Weakly, because I like it," he protested. Kabuto said bluntly, "If it puts us in danger, then it will go." "Haku!" He yelled as loudly as possible without alerting anyone to their presence, after Haku ripped the tuft out and cut it with some scissors made of ice, before depositing it all in an ice cube that wouldn't melt for another 10 hours so Naruto could do what he wanted with it. "You're both cruel," he pouted. "All right, would we like to go give some advice to the young novices?" Kabuto purred, "They're creating quite a commotion." "Whatever you want to do," Naruto said, heading a little further into the room and taking a seat in the rafters. "Haku can even go with you if she wants. But I'm staying put, right here." "All right, Haku. What are your thoughts? If I don't go you're liable to make enemies. I mean seriously, you make enemies without ever meeting someone. Who's to say you won't make enemies out of people you do meet?" She added. "And since NK is for once sitting quietly where he isn't going to cause trouble I have nothing to worry about." Sakura and Sasuke went on high alert as they approached, glaring slightly, and Shikamaru was also looking wary of them when Choji had dragged him up from his nap because of Sakura and Sasuke's alarming reactions. Naruto said sarcastically, rolling his eyes at being treated like a puppy, "Alright, I'll probably be here when you come back, unless the proctor finds me up here, at which point you won't miss my scream to alert you to the fact." "Hello again," said Kabuto. "What happened to your other teammate?" Sasuke, observing Naruto's absence, asked sternly. Sulking in the rafters after Haku was supposedly cruel to him. Kabuto continued to use his serene, inviting, purr. "You knew about it, Yakushi," from the rafters, Naruto shouted. "Why are you down here, then?" As Naruto screamed at the top of his lungs without leaving the rafters, Haku grinned and said, "He was just too annoying to put up with anymore. And luckily he pissed everyone in the room off, so he's too scared to come down from the rafters. I'm simply too smart to come down, so I'm not." Smirking at Naruto's gradually growing rage, Kabuto thought, blah, blah, blah. "Anyway, I've had some experience with the exam, and have a little help to offer." In fact, he has made 6 attempts at it. "This is the 7th attempt," Haku remarked. Reasonably, Sasuke remarked, "But you see that means he really won't have any good info, 'cause he's failed it 6 times. "Not quite," My former team constantly held me back. I had no intention of leaving them. In actuality, they had been assigned a different genin, and Kabuto had been placed on Naruto's team to keep an eye on him and ensure that he could be successfully manipulated. Unfortunately, they died, he said matter of fact. Well, the point is that I haven't been idle all this time. I have been gathering data about the genin. I can show you some if you want, Kabuto said. Sakura argued hesitantly, yay right, you're the ones who sabotaged our mission. I see. As they moved back into the rafters and into the empty corner of the room, Haku thought, well, I guess we'll just go put up with the angry idiot. The proctor's coming, Naruto exclaimed with a maniacal smile. He's calm. As the proctor and a few chunin emerged in front of the classroom, Haku was interrupted by a huge poof. All right, guys, pay attention. A written test will be administered to you. In order to find your designated seats, you will first need to come up and take a number. You three in the rafters are included in that, he called, pushing his finger toward Haku, Kabuto, and Naruto. They fell gracefully to the front of the line, taking numbers with joy and, in Haku's case, skipping to her seat. Naruto and Kabuto exchanged, what's gotten into her, looks. The exam started soon after, and there was the lovely sound of pencils tapping and scratching on the paper and wood. Gradually, people were kicked out of the exam, one team at a time, until only 15 minutes had passed. Finally, the proctor himself called someone out. Hi there, please get up from your desk and focus on the damn test. After looking at the proctor with his head up, Naruto's mouth moved and his somewhat girly voice reverberated throughout the room. Half the people in the room let their pencils fall to their desks. But I finished, he said, glancing at the wall clock, 7 minutes ago. Let me see. If you don't return to your tests, I'll have you all expelled. He stomped up the stairs to Naruto's seat and took the paper expecting to find all blank or wrong answers, but he was surprised to find it completely filled out with all the right answers. He glared at the smile for a moment before setting the test down and leaving the classroom when Naruto raised his feet again, not even caring that he had successfully cheated. He had already planned on it, and all of them had gotten tiny snakes, and he'd left another in the rafters. It then hissed the answers, and the smaller snakes would say the same answers, loud enough to be heard by the ones they were helping, but not loud enough to be heard by their neighbors. After about 45 minutes, they knew about Anko, Orochimaru's former pupil, but they weren't sure if she would identify them as members of Orochimaru's force. Naruto, Haku, and Kabuto had undoubtedly passed the test, which coincided with the arrival of a crazy woman they recognized outside the window. All right, maggots, Biki has simply softened, no more easing. I'll see you tomorrow at 7:45 a.m. in front of Training Ground 44. Anyone who arrives even 1 minute late will be eliminated right away. Scram now, she called. The genin left the room and went out to celebrate. Well, the majority of them, 3 in particular, were attempting to cover up the stench of snakes that had so thoroughly permeated their clothing. No one else seemed to notice, but she might, since they had heard that Anko could detect Orochimaru's presence because he smelled of snakes. Now comes the difficult part. Persuading the boys to wear some of Haku's cinnamon perfume. It's unbelievable that you made me wear this girly, foul-smelling shit. Neither can I, Haku uttered. I mean, Kabuto could pass for a girl if he tried, so it fits, but really, me? Actually, Kabuto started, you're about the average size of a woman and have the voice pitch of one. Therefore, it would probably be easier for you to pass for a woman than for me. I hate you sometimes, you say that a daily basis. It's because you irritate me so much. Hi, children, as she decided to prey on them, Anko exclaimed too happily, cinnamon, that smells good, and, I wonder why the boys are wearing it too. Aside from the fact that it's good retaliation for yesterday's situation in which NK won that wager and Kabuto and I lost everything, I thought their reactions would be amusing and I needed a good laugh this morning. Anko smiled and said, I think you and I are going to get along just fine, girly. After 10 minutes. Alright maggots. You're going to be going into this training ground. It's called Training Ground 44, but it's also known as the Forest of Death. Ah, I've heard of it. It's got a bunch of big animals and insects, right? Replied Shikamaru. Yay, humph, expect Nara to know it all, and ruin your carefully thought out speech. Anko rolled her eyes. After 10 more minutes. Alright, Haku, you're in the back, if anyone comes up behind us you take care of them, Naruto replied. Haku instructed, Kabuto, you're in front, you're best at close-up combat. And Naruto, you're in the middle, if either of us need help you can always summon a few poisonous snakes. But we should refrain from killing too many others with snakes, some might get suspicious of us if we do. Naruto turned when he heard a hissing behind them and knelt down to approach the small snake. The blonde stood back up and smiled slowly. Dad is in here, and would like us to steer clear in case someone makes the connection, and we're to incapacitate as many teams as possible. Alright, let's go. Right, new plan though, Haku, there's a team about 100 meters to the west. Kabuto will be between in case either of us gets hurt, and I will take the team to the northwest, and whoever is done first goes with Kabuto to help. Sounds good, let's go. Alright, move out. After 10 minutes. Just as she was finishing up the team, Haku heard Naruto and Kabuto behind her. They exchanged glances. Haku said, a bunch of wimps? Worse, they were setting up traps. One of them had already been injured. And they tried to defend and attack, it was pitiful. We should probably go on. What scroll did you get? A heaven scroll. How about you, Haku? An earth scroll. With a tone that leans more toward hissing, Naruto continued, and we already had an earth scroll. Let's destroy that one, the less teams the better. Besides, it'll make a big difference if there are less ninja in the village. I guess you're right, okay. So then send out your scouts, and we'll find out where more teams are. Okay. While eating dango, Anko grinned as she listened to the screams that miraculously made it to her eager ears across the entire forest. Unfortunately, an Anbu cut short her sadistic pleasure, ruining her moment. Ma'am, we have a problem. A problem, yes. And what kind of problem would involve me? We found bodies. I'm still curious as to why this concerns me. They're strange, different, their faces are gone, ma'am. What? She cried, leaping to her feet and gazing down at the pathetic Anbu. What do you mean their faces are gone? Take me there. Why? Yes, ma'am. Orochimaru was moving, and Sasuke Uchiha was his only target. He would be his, and Naruto would be crucial to his recovery. Naruto was allowed to stroll around the village, but Orochimaru was not allowed to remain outside for very long. Sasuke Uchiha. When I find your underpowered team, you will become mine, ever so slowly, I will make you mine, and when it's time I will take your body and make that Sharingan my own. Hinata was using her Byakugan to locate the tower when she suddenly stumbled back, startled and a little afraid, upon seeing a face that was too familiar. Kiba caught her before she could fall back all the way and asked, Hinata, what's wrong? I saw someone I didn't think I'd ever see again. Who was it, Hinata? Naruto. Naruto, but how is that possible? He's been missing for years. I don't know, but he's out there. I'd never be able to miss his face. NK. If they know about you, that's a bad thing. Want me to get them? No, we'll leave that team. One of them has the Byakugan. She could pick us out before we even could get close. No, it's better to find a different team. Alright. Who do you suggest? You know that other Leaf team? With the Nara, the Akamichi, and the Yamanaka. You want to get them? Yes. I think it will be fun to go, say hi, if you get what I'm saying. Why not, said Kabuto. I'm for it. Good, they're in the east part of the forest, fairly close to us. Dad is to the north, so we'll have to be careful not to meet him, otherwise we might get found out. Right, let's go. Then Ino grabbed the boy's scarf and yelled, okay, let's see, Choji, seriously? Come on, you just ate? I'm hungry, okay. Ino shouted up to him, fine, whatever, but well, let's see, Shika, do you have anything? She had forced him to scale a tree and then scout the forest. There's a team coming from the southwest. Good, let's get ready. They won't even know what hit them. Alright, Choji, finish your chips, and get ready with your expansion jutsu in those bushes. Ino, you're behind the bushes with Choji so he can defend you, and I'll stay up here and surprise them from above with my shadow techniques. Great, come on Choji. Ino exclaimed as she pulled Choji along behind the bushes. The group Shikamaru had mentioned soon materialized. For a brief moment, Shikamaru froze upon realizing who it was they had to battle. He only trapped the team's female member using his method, but then she did something. It wasn't until Choji rammed the tree and knocked the person behind him off balance for a moment, long enough for him to throw a strong punch, that he realized he was now frozen to the tree limb he was on and that someone was behind him. Wow, you're good. First time I've been hurt in a month. I've had lots of practice, as I'm sure you have, Naruto? How did you? Simple, I've been getting most of the information on you as it's turned up. You've certainly gotten tons better. Before I admit I would have been skeptical of you being able to do very much, but it seems with the right amount of training you've gotten much better. I wish you didn't know it was me. We weren't supposed to kill many teams, especially not with poison. But someone who knows my identity is a very bad thing. Shikamaru, you're going to die. With a sigh, Shikamaru said, "What a drag," before falling from the tree. Naruto dropped a snake onto his left arm after him. As the battle was being won all around him, Naruto smiled and said, "Okay Sonya, take care of him. I'll just be sitting by that tree." Ino and Choji were ill, prepared to face Haku and Kabuto. They were doing well until the air was almost torn in two by a terrible scream. Naruto said, "I see," as he got to his feet and waved Haku and Kabuto away from combat. "You're lucky. Haku, Kabuto, go find our next target. I'll be there in a minute." "Right," they exclaimed as they walked away. "You're very lucky that happened when it did. Otherwise you'd all be dead by now." Shikamaru staggered a little as a kunai in his leg moved, and he asked, "Why Naruto?" From their respective spots on the ground, Ino and Choji looked up. Fortunately, they were only slightly bruised and battered, with only minor cuts and scrapes. They could tell what he meant, so there was no need to finish his threat. "I have my reasons I don't have to state to you. See you in the tower. Got a few more teams to hit before going there myself. And don't tell anyone about me or else. I'd like to see that old geezer's face when he finds out. Remember, or else." After years of observing Orochimaru's unspoken threat ability, as he called it, Naruto had acquired it and was now able to use it with ease. A bewildered genin team was left behind when the black-clad ninja left. When Gaara stopped, he was just riding his bloody merry way. Naturally, this scared his siblings, who were afraid that he might have finally lost it with them and was going to murder them. They wouldn't rule it out now. With hesitation, Temari asked, "What's wrong?" Sadly, she received no response, and just as Temari and Kankuro were about to flee, Gaara began to shake, seemingly out of fear. After a minute, he finally stopped trembling and stood straight. "It's nothing, move." Naruto chuckled with delight, having discovered his third Jinchuriki thus far. He was quite pleased with himself at the moment. One shared the 9 tails, another with the 2-tailed Nibi, and now with the 1-tailed Shikaku. "Hey Haku, Kabuto, we're going to split for now. Kabuto, I'm told that there's a team that just went by here a few minutes ago. They went north. Haku, there's a team to the south. I'll take the one to the northwest. We meet at the tower. Sound good?" "Right," said Haku, ready to go. "Of course," replied Kabuto. They all went off in different directions after Naruto nodded. A few days later, Uraya was content to have time to herself and was curled up with a good book on the couch. She had plenty of time to steal Naruto's money and go to upscale restaurants. Kabuto was napping and then probably taking a shower, while Naruto and Haku sat quietly in the tower's upper floors. Since she had arrived first, Haku had already been cleaned, fed, and watered. Kabuto was last, having only begun to refuel today, and Naruto was second, merely awaiting some food. There were still 2 days left. After spending a day and a half in the forest, they arrived at the tower and reconnected. While Haku used ice jutsu to freeze the team from the inside out, the boys suffered a few injuries, but everyone else made it with comparatively few injuries. More precisely, freeze their hearts until they ceased to beat. After taking and destroying their scrolls, she eventually left them, barely alive, and proceeded to the tower. Naruto had begun by using snakes, one from each fang, to administer a sedative and a mild poison. He became an opponent after it got all but one. Naturally, he prevailed, but he did sustain some minor injuries. Orochimaru, their sensei, Uraya, and the team itself were all proud of Kabuto's clean and speedy job of severing multiple arteries, which caused his opponents to die almost immediately from blood loss. It was painfully evident that they were all exhausted when Naruto dozed off against Haku's shoulder, interrupting his sentence. "Oh Naruto. You really do pick the most random places to do things, don't you?" she said softly. She nearly woke him up, but she couldn't bring herself to do so after noticing the bags under his eyes. Naruto grunted softly, almost in agreement. Okay. Sleep on my shoulder, but only this once. Next time I'm kicking you off of somewhere high. With a sigh, Haku pushed herself further into the couch. Ino was terrified. Really afraid. Naruto was in the room, even though she detested being there. She had not seen him since they had met in the forest, and they had hardly discussed it together for fear that someone would overhear them. Asuma touched her shoulder and asked, Ino, are you okay? Ino stopped trembling, but it wasn't until now that she realized how much she was actually shaking. I'm fine, it's just, there are a few people here I'd rather not fight. Ino, you'll be fine, and if worse comes to worse, the match can be stopped. Right, you're right, sensei. Thank you. While this was going on, Naruto was scarring the living daylights out of Gaara by using Kyuubi's chakra to let an excessively malevolent wave wash away from him, pushing everyone in its wake, including his own teammates, away. The first match was finally going to be decided, and the first match will be between Neji Hyuga and Dosu Kinuta. The two left their teams and went down to their match. Naturally, the match didn't last long because Dosu was rendered useless as soon as Neji shut off all of the chakra in his arms, and it ended abruptly. Winner Neji Hyuga. 2 new names appeared as the board flashed once more. The next match will be Shikamaru Nara and Zaku Abumi. Shikamaru strolled down, and by the time he reached the bottom, everyone was thinking that he was a snail descendant. Perhaps that was the summons from the Nara clan. The proctor took a step back as soon as both boys were prepared. Begin. Zaku launched a series of kunai at Shikamaru, twisting in a nearly impossible manner before each one sank into the wall with a dull thunk. Not bad, but let's see you dodge this. Shikamaru was hit by an explosive tag that blew through the wind as it tore up the floor. He was caught and unable to move, which turned out to be his first and last error. When the dust finally settled, he discovered shadows that were related to his own. He jerked, but not of his own volition, and as soon as he did, he was spinning quickly. He continued to spin, as evidenced by the looks he received from Shikamaru. After 2 nauseating minutes of spinning, Shikamaru finally stopped, barely flinching as Zaku prepared to pass out. After dropping the jutsu and seeing his opponent fall, the Nara threw some kunai to pin Zaku's arms down and turned to leave. Proctor, this match is over. Winner, Shikamaru Nara. When Naruto looked at the board, he saw that the person he wanted to fight the most was going to do so. Indeed, he was finally going to face the person he wanted to exact revenge on. I know, I've used that name before. The next match is Sasuke Uchiha and Akarui Kamichi. Sasuke whispered, leaping over the railing, so to see if it's true, Naruto followed suit from across the room. The proctor took a step backward. Begin. They charged right away. Sasuke needed to know if it was real, so he devised a scheme to divert attention and possibly remove his mask. Sasuke took the time to strike up a conversation after they clashed. Once more, they went by and came to a stop on different sides of the arena. So, is that you, Naruto? It's you, isn't it? No one could hear what they were saying. As Sasuke lunged at him once more, Naruto laughed evilly. And does it matter if I am? So then, it's true. My suspicions were right a couple weeks ago when we met. So then what happened to you? Asked Sasuke. Naruto mockingly blocked another attack by saying, and why should I tell you? Don't tell me the stuck-up and overly proud Uchiha was worried about little old me. I wasn't, I'm just curious. Just curious, huh? Well, if I didn't know better I'd believe that, but you're lying. The blonde sprang to his feet, laughing, and slashed Sasuke's arm open, dripping blood. You're pathetic. Honestly, I can't see what he wants from you. Orochimaru, who had been listening to the conversation through Snake, was beginning to get upset. He was certain that he could understand his son's enjoyment, but it wouldn't do to reveal that he was pursuing Sasuke's body. Through his snakes, he sent a message telling him to stop and be done. As he moved closer to the other boy, Naruto nodded and smiled, almost savagely. You're fairly strong, but this is over. What do you mean? The blonde was right. He was feeling it, but he wasn't going to show it. I gave you a sedative a few minutes ago, and with all that movement, it should be working about now. Sasuke growled and got to his feet. You're wrong, it's not working yet, he said. Okay, you want more of a beating, fine, I'll give you one more blow. His smile was beaming as he joyfully grabbed Sasuke by the arm and kicked him. He leapt from the balcony and kicked again, then again, and again, until at last, when the dark-haired boy was almost at the ceiling, he was flipped and kicked hard in the stomach, sending him crashing to the ground with a roaring head and multiple broken ribs, Naruto landing next to him. When medical teams rushed to tend to their last loyal Uchiha, Naruto nearly smiled as he made his way back to his team. Don't tell a soul what you know or else. I plan to make my grand entrance home during the next part of the exams. Uraya frowned slightly and remarked, you seem to be having fun. So, I was having a little fun. You understand that having fun at the expense of others is wrong. It's wrong, unless it's a joke and doesn't offend anyone. Come on, he's the one who treated me the worst. I enjoyed giving him a good beating. Even so, I didn't enjoy seeing you that way. Don't do it again, please. You shouldn't become like the One-Tails, in my opinion. All right, I swear that I won't enjoy beating people unless I have a valid reason to do so. Sighing, Uraya said, better, we'll work on it. The following match was revealed. Gaara and Sakura Haruno. Then Naruto muttered, he was going on a freaking massacre in the forest. Oh, this will be good. Little Miss Pinky is weak. And Tomato Head has got a lust for killing. I forfeit. Sakura knew when she wouldn't win, so she called before the match even started. Well, Gaara is the winner. Haku Momochi and Kankuro, the proctor called, turning back to the board as the two backed away. Haku remained composed and calm as she gave Kankuro a look she hoped a boy couldn't resist. Of course, who could ignore the beauty of a lady like herself? She didn't want to give away too much about her technique yet, so she had to conceal herself behind her attractive exterior and her status. I hope you fight fair, Kankuro. I rather clean fights, of course I'm sure from previous encounters you know exactly what I'm capable of. Start. Haku started to move forward, cutting at his clothing to determine whether it was the puppet or the real Kankuro. It turned out to be the puppet, and while Kankuro was hiding wrapped up in his back, she pretended not to notice as she iced the joints slowly but steadily. She appeared to be dancing with the piece of wood as it slowed, getting faster. At last, she halted and struck the puppet one last time. She leveled a steel-like gaze at him and said, this battle is over. I've broken all the joints in your puppet. You are not a close-range fighter, so I would suggest you go ahead and forfeit the match, before I hurt you. All right, I know when I'm losing. I give up, Proctor. All right, Haku Momochi wins the match. I'm grateful. That was a good match, she said, drawing nearer. Be sure to dry and defrost your puppet to prevent deformation. Humph, rejoicingly rubbing it in their faces that she was the best thus far, Haku skipped back to her team. The proctor took the stage once more and declared, Shino Aburame and Tenten, the next battle. Tenten had a resolute attitude, while Shino remained uninterested, possibly due to his collar. The two went down to the arena and faced each other. All right, let's start the match. The proctor barely had time to back off before Tenten threw a couple of weapons at Shino, who easily ducked them and fell to the ground across the room, staring at her for a moment before raising his right arm and launching a swarm of bugs after her. Tenten paled at the bugs and dodged. She detested them, she really, truly did. Ew. Why bugs, really? It is my clan's specialty. All right. I suppose I can't hold it against you for adopting your clan's skills. Interesting, you have a wind element of chakra. One of my bugs attached itself to you and was leeching chakra. You have a wind elemental chakra. She pulled out a scroll and said, that's creepy. She opened it and unleashed all of its weapons, trying to impale Shino, but the boy avoided looking at her because he had most of his bugs returned to him after multiple deaths. This could go on for days, but I believe that eventually one of us will have to give up. You're very skilled with those weapons. It's a shame that you're as long range as I am. As he watched the weapons fly at him, he said impassively, it's only natural to get bored or impatient. His eyes were slowly moving behind his glasses. After 10 minutes, Tenten almost cried out in exasperation. She and Shino had been evading each other's blows quite skillfully, and as he had previously stated, this could go on indefinitely. Unless... An evil smile appeared on her face. Hi, Shino. In any case, how long can you continue this? She inquired. At least several more hours, she took out some bug repellent from one of her pouches, and Shino, looking a little taken aback, walked another 5 feet away. Oh, I was correct, bug repellent would be effective on you. Proctor I forfeit, Tenten cackled evilly as Shino returned to his team, slightly annoying Neji and frightening Lee and Guy. Neji thought, why'd I get all the weird teammates? Hinata Hyuga and Kabuto Yakushi will face off next. Given that they were matched for speed, this was likely one of the fastest fights. However, Kabuto managed to cut multiple muscles, and the match was decided in his favor even though Hinata gave it her all. Kiba Inuzuka vs Rock Lee came next. Hopefully, you're prepared, Lee said as he assumed a fighting stance, and Kiba and Akamaru followed suit. Start, Akamaru growled and checked on his master. Kiba shook it off, despite the fact that his arm was probably broken, and charged with a note to himself never to get near Lee's legs. The three of them began moving instantly, with Kiba turning to block Lee and the boy putting up an arm. However, to the surprise of everyone but a few, there was a sickening crack from Kiba's arm as he pulled away, cursing horribly. Naturally, that was not possible because Lee typically attacked with his legs, and despite Kiba and Akamaru's best efforts, Kiba was taken off his feet and down in 10 minutes. The winner is Rock Lee. Kin Suchi vs Choji Akamichi is the upcoming match. The two entered the arena and stood face to face. Begin. Since Kin and Choji were both reasonably skilled at estimating their opponents, they were evaluating one another based on what little they could tell from appearances, which is why this battle didn't begin as quickly as the others. Well, if there's one thing I can tell from appearances, it's that you're fat. What did you call me just now? Fatty, what will you do about it? After 5 minutes. Ehem, winner, Choji Akamichi. The last match will be Tamari vs Ino Yamanaka. You better get ready, girly. I'm going whip that pretty little butt of yours into shape. A few minutes later, the proctor took a few steps forward and saw that Tamari had beaten Ino severely, leaving the girl sprawled out on the floor, bleeding, and most likely unconscious if the crack from when her head hit the floor was any indication. The winner is Tamari. The matches for the last round will now be displayed to you. Neji Hyuga vs Choji Akamichi, Haku Momochi vs Tenten, Gaara vs Rock Lee, Tamari vs Akaru Ikamichi, and Shikamaru Nara vs Kabuto Yakushi. Use the time to train because the final round is in a month. The genin all filed out of the tower, went to their hotels, and had a good long sleep after the proctor vanished in a cloud of smoke. Jiraiya waited in Hiruzen's office, and since he had a vague notion of where his sensei was, he chose to settle down on his spinning chair and rub his eyes as he slowly fell asleep. However, he was rudely awakened from his reverie when the office door slammed open and Hiruzen entered, followed by the elders. It appeared to the Toad Sage that they were fighting about something, and after another 3 minutes or so, they concluded their argument for the time being, leaving the poor old Hokage alone. Well, he wasn't alone, but it was quiet. At last, Jiraiya was conscious enough to form a sentence. Hey sensei. Hello Jiraiya. I'm most likely moving your chair up, am I not? Yes you are. Furthermore, I'm going to assume that you want it returned. Jiraiya got up and sat on the windowsill, saying, you'd be right in the assumption. I'll ask it again. Are you certain Naruto is in the village? 90% positive, excellent. Where in the village is he? He's on the sound team led by Araya Kamichi. You mean that red-haired Junin? Yes, that would be her. All right, which team is she on? The door slammed open to reveal a white Shikamaru and a concerned Hinata. We suspect Naruto to be the one. We must speak. With panting as if he had fled from the village's edge, Shikamaru uttered those words. Will this not wait until I'm finished? What? Asked Hiruzen. No. We can all discuss it together because Hinata is talking about the same thing as us. And that subject would be, Jiraiya probingly asked. Naruto. Shikamaru let Hinata in and then went inside himself, saying, come in, both of you, and close the doors. Why don't you lock those as well? I'd rather not have someone barge in while we're in the middle of this conversation. Shikamaru locked the door and took a seat next to Hinata. Even though Shikamaru was in the old Hokage's cozy and secure office, he said, can you shut and lock and put the blinds over the windows as well, just in case, without regaining any color. What do you mean by this regarding Naruto? Hiruzen inquired quietly. Hinata, you go first. I in the forest of death, I was searching with my Byakugan. And I saw his, Naruto's face, it was a little different, but it was his. Gosh, why didn't I consider searching with the Byakugan? Jiraiya moaned as she felt like a complete moron. What about you, Shikamaru? What information do you have regarding his whereabouts and companions? The boy said urgently. I've asked for suspicions, and I could tell you were holding back, but now it's serious, so I need to know. We don't know anything for sure yet. Anything, guesses, suspicions, please. Alright, fine. Our suspicions are that Orochimaru kidnapped him, and if he did, it seems as though he raised him, and made Naruto a part of his force, but those are only our suspicions. I can confirm them, Shikamaru grumbled. This is such a drag, only a nin like Orochimaru could make Naruto, of all people, go so bad. What are you saying? What I mean is that my teammates and I are pathetic in comparison to him and his team, Shikamaru said with a little laugh. They attacked us in the forest of death, and all three of us would have perished if something hadn't happened nearby that made them flee. According to the authority he was spouting, it was all his doing. He has turned into a heartless, vicious murderer. Naruto a ruthless, that can't. It is. He was going to kill me by hand after I told him who he was. I'm not sure what that Orochimaru guy did to him, but he's very vindictive. And he threatened to kill us if we spoke before he left. He said something about seeing your face when you found out. Wearing a mask over his face, contacts only, and a black hat to cover his hair, Kabuto crept in through the window and walked around the room's bed, looking at the sleeping boy. The curse mark and the fight with Naruto had left him greatly affected, so he wouldn't be waking up for a while, giving Kabuto plenty of time to kidnap Sasuke and escape. A scuffing sound came from behind the door, as someone paused for a minute before opening it. Kabuto leapt Sasuke's bed, cut all the wires and tubes, hefted the genin in his arms, and attempted to jump out the window, but was stopped when a kunai was thrown right next to his ear, slightly cutting it, but the black fabric didn't show the blood. Where do you anticipate taking my student? With venom in his voice, Kakashi asked. Kabuto did the only thing he could do, setting Sasuke down without looking back and jumping out the window to leave the hospital grounds. Naturally, Kakashi caught up to him after slamming the door to draw attention to Sasuke's room. Fortunately, his mask and hat prevented him from identifying the person, and he would have to stop him to get rid of both very easily. As a swarm of birds blocked the one-eyed Junin's vision by attacking him, a kunai abruptly cut the man off, and Kabuto escaped. A shadow from the tree next to him laughed evilly before vanishing with a very high-pitched whistle. The boy in the shadows grinned. He could thank his sister for that. Now to deal with Kabuto. Naruto rushed to the room where he and Kabuto were. What on earth was that? The boy screamed and uttered some foul language. Orders from your father? No, I'm being serious. You couldn't simply hold off until later? No, I was unable to. Later, he would have been awake. He is currently taking painkillers and still has some sleeping pills in his system. I might have been able to pull it off only then. He would scream and struggle the entire way at any other time. Whatever, Naruto muttered, suddenly feeling extremely exhausted. I need a nap, I'm really, TIR. The blonde fell to the ground as Kabuto grinned and put away his needle. Naruto had been upset that he had given him a sleeping aid, and the fact that his heart rate had gone up very much helped because it entered the bloodstream and quickly dispersed. Kabuto lifted the pale boy, took off his cape and mask, and laid him on the bed. He then put his hand to Naruto's forehead and channeled chakra, gradually restoring the strength of the seal he had created years earlier. All right, Naruto. Now, let's fix that seal I put on your memories. I can't have you having a relapse. Kunai Lord Orochimaru would have my head, and I've managed to keep it this long, he said. Jiraiya sat on the roof outside of Kabuto's and Naruto's room, listening and even glancing at his godson. Hearing and seeing him was unquestionably Naruto, and after what that Kabuto kid had said, he realized that his memories were sealed, which explained his actions. They were getting much stronger. Haku was working on strengthening her ice techniques and a new technique that would make the invasion easier. The next couple of weeks went by quickly and without any incidents. Kabuto could tell that the seal he had placed was back to full strength, and the team was now training frequently, having to be called several times to return to the hotel for meals and sleep. In addition, Naruto was honing a technique that he wanted to use for the final round in Invasion because the one he had used on Sasuke was not yet complete. Naruto had become Kabuto's involuntary test subject while he was trying to channel chakra deeper into the muscles because he could only get a few inches. Naturally, he healed it later, but now the blonde flinched whenever Kabuto brought up the incident or touched him. Everyone knew that Naruto couldn't maintain his positive attitude for very long, and they were just waiting for him to snap. His temper had gone out. "What did you think you were doing talking so openly about it?" He was whispering and shouting at a couple of ninja. The entire plan would have been ruined if he had told the Hokage that information. Kabuto, who was watching from the sidelines, was a little taken aback to see Baki challenge the blonde, even if only slightly. "We're sorry, but I would have gotten him anyways," Baki said, half apologizing, half reprimanding. Naruto rolled his eyes and said, "What would happen if you hadn't and the old man discovered what was happening? Both of you would be in serious trouble. Since it has already been resolved, I don't feel like dealing with it, but if it occurs again." "It won't." "Fine, Kabuto, come on, we need to talk." "Give me one moment, I want to say something to Baki here." "Fine, I'll be waiting at the hotel." "You know Baki. I'm shocked, your conversational style is really getting on his nerves. I would watch what you say around him because he might discipline you. And I think the only reason he was upset was because he was afraid his father would punish me. Therefore, despite your perception of him as a spoiled brat, egotistical, and overpowered, he has other goals and is worth your time." Well, I should go report to the cage now that I understand." "Baki, see you later. Be prepared. Don't worry, I'll be back in time." According to the Hokage's orders, Shikamaru, Tenten, Lee, and Choji stood in a row at the rail, while Neji stood a few feet away, his Byakugan partially activated. Jiraiya had reported his findings, and the old Hokage had made the decision to be ready for anything that might happen. Jiraiya had insisted on sitting on the rooftop above, and was waiting in case anything happened. If something happened, the opponent would probably choose the rooftop because it was much more efficient to monitor other things from above than to do the same from below. The old Hokage knew something was going on after Hayate's body was found, so he had a complete plan to at least get the people around him through whatever happened. He had sent Hayate to investigate the person who had attempted to kidnap Sasuke, Kabuto Yakushi, whom Kakashi suspected after catching a glimpse of a quarter of his face during their pursuit. Of course they didn't know, but they felt that there was a possibility, a very strong possibility, and they had grown even more suspicious after Hayate's death, but they had chosen to prepare rather than risk any more lives. The first match was called out by Genma, the new proctor. Shikamaru Nara and Kabuto Yakushi, he called. Kabuto and Shikamaru were quite similar, weighing each other up before the match even started. On the way down the stairs, Shikamaru lived up to the Nara name by being a lazy, intelligent, slow, patient, strategic, and dreamy person. Shikamaru was also assessing his opponent. He was physically powerful, had great chakra control, according to the doctors I saw, was self-assured, sadistic, unfazed, diligent, intelligent, and smart, but he didn't think as well as I do. He also seemed to need someone else to think for him, or perhaps someone else made him think for them. It was an interesting combination. Start. Kabuto and Shikamaru were just standing there when the match began, and naturally, Naruto and Haku were perplexed because Kabuto was a close quarters fighter while Shikamaru wasn't, but they weren't moving. Kabuto finally took the initiative and ran at the boy with the pineapple head. Shikamaru managed to get away, but he still felt a cut on his chest. Something had sliced through his shirt and left a half-inch deep cut. What the hell? Well, this is problematic. Interesting. Kabuto stepped back for a moment, watching his opponent sneak away behind the trees. A shadow just managed to seize his foot, but as soon as he moved, the shadow was no longer able to exert any strain. Interesting. For a Nara, you're pretty accomplished, aren't you? Shikamaru sat in silence, considering his options, and soon a grand scheme came to him. If he could just. After 30 minutes, Kabuto had been attacking Shikamaru intermittently for the past 30 minutes in an attempt to render him incapable of carrying out his plan, whatever it was. At last, Shikamaru threw a kunai and his shirt into the air, creating a shadow, and Kabuto saw the opportunity and shot it down. Do you have anything else? I'm let down. Not quite, Shikamaru remarked. Kabuto stepped out and reached for his weapons pouch, but his body remained motionless. Perhaps you're more formidable than I thought. Ah, I see you were biding your time. Long enough for that shadow from the wall to give you enough of a boost to extend your shadow. Long enough to catch me. Well, perhaps you're better than I thought. How troublesome. Proctor, I quit. Why did Shikamaru speak first? Genma inquired. Less polite, Ino exclaimed. What the heck? Why the heck are you quitting, idiot? When I get my hands on you, Shikamaru? I burned too much chakra earlier. By default, Kabuto Yakushi prevails. Kabuto gave the proctor a courteous smile and said, I'm also withdrawing from the competition. In addition, I used far too much chakra to accomplish much more. Fine. Go on then, back to your team. If you don't mind, I would like to go and sit with my sensei. Fine, Genma said after giving it some thought for a few minutes while the arena's damage from Kabuto was repaired. Thank you. Akarui Kamichi and Tamari will face off in the upcoming match. Tamari and Naruto fell from the balcony, with Naruto falling more slowly due to a wind chakra pushing against him. They stood ready, while Genma, anticipating a devastating battle, stood halfway up the wall. Start. Naruto was a close range fighter for the most part, using that to his advantage by sneaking snakes out and, depending on who he's fighting, either poisoning them or knocking them out with a sedative. Tamari was primarily a long-range fighter, but she had some close-range skills because she had to be able to take care of herself. They were going to be their walkie-talkies during the invasion. Naruto ran forward at blinding speed, giving Tamari a run for her money, and stopped in front of her, dropping smoke pellets, and grinned happily, calling forth a small snake that could go up his sleeve. He then attacked, slashing at the blonde nin, who escaped with little to no harm. She counterattacked him after jumping back and removing one of her kunai. You're good, Tamari said, drawing back her breath a little more forcefully than usual. Naruto, who was also a little exhausted, remarked, You're not so bad yourself. There were sparks in the air as they clashed once more. Meanwhile, Kabuto slipped off the balcony and discovered his target, an Anbu black. No one heard him kill the Anbu and take his mask and cloak, which he left in a small corner to use in a few minutes. Then, a loud explosion broke his focus, and Naruto was proclaimed the winner. At last, he went to sit next to Raya and watched as the next game was announced. Haku, Tenten and Momochi. You're going to make for an interesting opponent, Tenten. Tenten extended her hand and said, You too, fair fight, okay. Haku took it and said, As fair as a fight between two ninja can get. Tenten, realizing what the other girl was getting at, shook her hand and they both grinned slightly before releasing their grip and moving back to get ready. Start. Since it was a battle between two kunoichi, it was inevitable that things would get a little dirty, but by the end, Tenten's fingers were frozen to her weapons and Haku was trapped in a trap of weapons, so they were both declared to be in a tie. Tenten assisted Haku, and Haku assisted Tenten in removing the weapons from her fingers because she had done the same thing with her senbon a few times. Kabuto, on the other hand, had quietly moved into that Anbu uniform and was standing behind the crowd, anticipating the signal. The whistle that would initiate the invasion. The one signal that would start the Hidden Leaf's destruction. I won't even go into detail about this one because it would take about 5,000 words, and I don't feel like it. The next battle was between Gaara and Lee. They were fighting hard, and after Lee took a hard blow to the head, Gaara went into his sandball to change, against the plan. Dang it, what the hell is he doing? Well, forget plans. Invasion begins now. Naruto's eyes hardened as he watched. The blonde stepped onto the rail and whistled, enhancing the sound with chakra, and then everything went topsy-turvy. Kabuto, on the other hand, had quietly moved into that Anbu uniform and was standing behind the crowd, anticipating the signal. The whistle that would initiate the invasion. The one signal that would start the Hidden Leaf's destruction. I won't even go into detail about this one because it would take about 5,000 words, and I don't feel like it. The next battle was between Gaara and Lee. They were fighting hard, and after Lee took a hard blow to the head, Gaara went into his sandball to change, against the plan. Dang it, what the hell is he doing? Well, forget plans. Invasion begins now. Naruto's eyes hardened as he watched. The blonde stepped onto the rail and whistled, enhancing the sound with chakra, and then everything went topsy-turvy. Orochimaru was starting to fight the third Hokage while the Sound Four prepared to make the shield. Most of the ninja in the crowd had remained awake, but not all of them, and Naruto went up to the spectator area as the sound wave reached the outside forces because he had heard the snake breaking down the wall. You both choose 5 ninja, form teams, and guard the area, Kabuto and Haku. You and I will keep these Junin away from them, Uraya. I need 5 nin down there to help control those spoiled genin. Move it, everyone. Not wanting to upset their commander, who actually appeared to be in a fairly good mood today, there was a flurry of activity as the ninja moved out. Kurenai wasn't entirely sure, but Kakashi was certain that it was Naruto and Asuma because Naruto had frequently visited his father's office and his house when he was younger. After hearing Kakashi say, "So, Naruto, long time no see." Naruto turned away from his fight with Guy because he thought Kakashi was more intriguing. "You know, I have to say, the black is a good color for a ninja, but I think you might have overdone it a bit," Kakashi said. Uraya had finished her battle and was now fighting Guy, while Naruto was charging him and swinging his kunai. "You appear grumpy, and judging by the responses to your commands, you're probably grumpy most of the time, aren't you? Did you lose your voice while screaming all those orders?" Kakashi asked, leaping from the spectator's box and allowing Naruto to follow him in the hopes of infuriating him so he could capture him. "Are you going to stop talking already? Hitaki, you talk too much." "Do I? Dang. It sounds like there's an unfair fight on the roof. See you, Yappy." He left the altercation and leapt onto the wall, pausing briefly to alert Uraya before continuing on his way to the roof and whistling to cause a tear in the barrier that let him stretch it and get inside. He discovered his father engaged in combat with the third and Jiraiya. "Ah," Orochimaru replied. "There you are. I wasn't sure you'd want to leave that wonder battle you were having with Hitaki." Jiraiya and Hiruzen had stopped fighting to stare at Naruto, who said, "I couldn't leave you alone with an unfair fight." Naruto smiled, removing his mask for once to reveal his face, which was a horribly pale color, nearly as white as paper. He liked watching their reactions before he had to put the mask back on to avoid burning in the sun. "Did someone snitch on me, or are you shocked?" Hiruzen remarked, "We've had our suspicions for years." Orochimaru purred, "Naruto, you go ahead and take care of Jiraiya, I'll get sensei." "All right, this will be enjoyable. I'm coming, so you had better be prepared." With a kunai coated in snake sedative, Naruto called charging Jiraiya. He wanted Jiraiya to be immobile so he could kill him, not dead or unconscious. Jiraiya simply wanted to knock Naruto out and perhaps, if at all possible, break the seal on his memories. Naruto charged at him again, taking a swing at his arm, barely making a small nick in the skin, not enough to knock him out or even slow him down. He dipped his kunai back into the sedative, grinding his teeth as he saw Gaara transform into his Shikaku form, something he had heard about but had never seen in person. Unfortunately, his brief moment of inattention was exploited, and Jiraiya surprised Naruto by approaching from behind and punching him in the abdomen. The blonde was momentarily knocked out as he lay there, but the excruciating throbbing stopped after a second, and he got back up, albeit a little confused but still capable of fighting. Haku began her series of hand signals, creating 2 walls of ice, and they swept together, clapping to take out several Anbu while Kabuto incapacitated the remaining ones. Kabuto and Haku stood back to back, fighting off several Anbu. The teams they had selected had failed, and they were the only ones left after their final subordinate fell. "Kabuto, what should we do now? We should go and do the job those 5 couldn't. It seems Mesuji is doing fine, but the rest seem to have been incapable of this mission." "All right, so remove those tiny genin, or take charge of Shikaku." Naruto and Lord Orochimaru might get angry if we did nothing about Shikaku. If he ruins other parts of the plan, it could be bad. "Point. To the Shikaku we go. After you," Kabuto said, gesturing toward her. "Coward," Haku remarked as he walked by. "Well, at least if I'm a coward, I'm a smart coward. Also a little too smug for my liking. Well, that is my nature. And you talk too much too. I'm good at that. Ah, just shut up and stop with your comebacks." "As you wish, Queen Haku, Shikamaru. I'm fine, just got some broken ribs, and I think my brain is fried," the boy moaned as he slid down the tree. He was being checked on by Hinata, the only person with any kind of medical knowledge. She said, "You'll be fine, that's just going to bruise a bit later, and that one too," though I think that one is broken, as she touched a few ribs lightly. Ow, yay. I'm not meant for up-close battles. Shikamaru moaned and forced himself to sit up. All right, Ino. I want you to enter Tomato Head's head and try to stop this from there. After Ino leaves, Choji, Kiba, Akamaru, and Neji will attack Tomato Head. Go ahead and get the puppet boy over there, Shino and Hinata. You help me, Sakura and Sasuke. Tenten, you watch your teammate closely there. Sakura swiftly left, and Sasuke reluctantly listened and approached them. How may we assist? You'll divert her attention while I use my shadow binding technique to capture her. When she is unable to move after that, you will at the very least knock her out. Fine. Jiraiya and Naruto were engaged in a fierce battle, and neither of them appeared to be making any progress at all. Jiraiya was growing weary, but Naruto was also growing weary, albeit more slowly. Hey kid, tell me how much you train. 8 hours a day. He backed out of the battle for a moment to catch his breath, saying, that would be it then. He had just 2 seconds before Naruto was on him again, attacking with a fresh rage. You ever do anything for fun, like read, play games? Trying to be evasive, Naruto stated, I read, play with birds, and sometimes Sensei has our team do tag around the base for fun raining. Interesting Sensei. She's pretty too. No, you perverted idiot. That's my sister. So stop giving her googly eyes. Naruto screamed, causing the elderly man's arm to finally sustain a good cut. Our sensei is someone different. Fine then, what's their name? Not telling you. Humph. Fine then, they kept fighting, with Naruto suffering minor but manageable injuries. As the sedative caused the old man to slow down even more, he was able to land a solid blow at last. After discarding the previous kunai and dipping a fresh one in it, he charged Jiraiya once more. However, the man ducked and, in fact, tripped him. He discovered that the sedative, covered kunai was buried deep in his side. What the heck was da? He exclaimed. As his own sedative filtered through his system, he fell silent. Dang it, hey, I guess that's what I get for dipping a new kunai in. Dang, there's a lot of blood coming out. Congrats, old man. You're the third person to hurt me this badly. Not bad, he muttered, still awake and able to see everything. Jiraiya got down next to him and tried to slow the blood flow. There was so much of it, saying, dang it kid, I hadn't wanted to hurt you this badly. He finally understood Tsunade's phobia. In fact, their plan was going really well. Tamari and Kankuro were soon unconscious, allowing them to focus entirely on caring for Gaara. Ino had told them that Gaara was sleeping, so if they could wake him up, they would be okay. However, this is easier said than done. Kakashi had spotted a threat in their wake and had taught him about it so he would be ready, so Sasuke thought. I wonder, before he got down and charged his Chidori. He charged at the sand monster, running up its leg, then its front, and finally reaching the top, where he discovered the redhead slumped over and unconscious. Within a second, Sasuke decided what to do and, using all of his speed, pushed the Chidori through a section of his side, causing a scream of pain that woke up Gaara and his siblings and made the sand monster vanish. Sasuke clutched his curse mark as he lunged backward. When Kabuto and Haku saw the crumbling sand monster, they halted. Kabuto remarked, looks like someone did the job for us. Haku let out a sigh. Yay, but that also means we might have issues getting the Shikaku back into the battle when it is the right time to have him there. Alright, for now we should split up and go find areas to help with. Alright. We meet back at the arena, or, if things go really bad, on the borders, got it? See you in about an hour. As Orochimaru watched his sensei slowly pass away, he felt content. Admittedly, he had lost his arms during the struggle, but once he had his new body, he could fix them. Easy fix, but that wasn't the case with Naruto, who was taken by Jiraiya and couldn't be retrieved. At this moment, not even the Sound 4 could, so he made do with the next best thing, which was to have his snake talk to Naruto's snake and promise to send the Sound 4 to get him and Sasuke in the coming months. He also concluded that Kabuto could reseal his memories if necessary, but he didn't believe Naruto would turn that easily even with his memories sealed. Sitting, standing, or floating, in a sea of black, Naruto observed the outside world through what appeared to be a prison cell window of some perverse kind. He discovered that he was only able to see, hear, and think. He asked himself, why is Dad leaving without me? Upon closer inspection, he discovered that he was hurt. Naruto had enough knowledge of the plans to believe that Sasuke would be rescued and that there would be no need for concern when he got him. Despite his injuries, Naruto was content to sit in the coldest, darkest corner of his cell. He was lying back against the wall, his arms crossed, his eyes open, and he was observing people as they went by. He was unable to think of anything to say, so he sat there in total silence, not even flinching when Jiraiya or Shikamaru passed by. Shikamaru was standing at the village gates, his right hand holding a bag over his shoulder, his left arm in a sling, his ribs wrapped, and he was heavily medicated for the journey he had insisted on taking. Naturally, Choji was his best friend and wouldn't let him leave like that. In addition, he had to make sure Shikamaru didn't get any worse injuries and that he took his painkillers on time, especially since they had a lot of walking ahead of them. The boy simply sighed as he stood there. He was feeling fine at the moment because his medications were taking effect, but he was concerned that he wouldn't reach the next town if they didn't depart right away. Choji called out, "Hey Shikamaru," and approached him. The pack was on both of the other boy's shoulders, but he had one too. "Would you like me to take your pack?" "No thanks, I can take it. If you decide otherwise tell me and I'll take it, okay?" "Alright, but I'm fine," Jiraiya said, "Hey kids," as she descended from above them. Shikamaru snarled, "You're late." Only by 10 or 15 minutes, Jiraiya approached the Nara and examined it. "You're looking a little pale there, are you sure you can make this?" For once, Shikamaru had something he truly had the will to start and see through to completion. "Yes," he said, his eyes burning. And he would go to the end. He had learned about what Kabuto had done to Naruto's memories, and after talking with the white-haired Sannin, he had decided that Tsunade was the only person who could unlock those memories besides Kabuto. He could therefore use guilt cards, if nothing else. "Are you positive, kid?" Shikamaru said as he left. "Yes, so let's get moving before the happy drugs wear off." Choji gazed in wonder. Jiraiya questioned him, "Hey, are you sure you should even be out of the hospital?" "No, boy, he must really be on happy drugs if he's acting like this. Let's go before he hurts himself more after 3 hours." Choji gave Shikamaru a piggyback while Jiraiya stood in front of them, observing the two. "What happened?" "The happy drugs wore off," Shikamaru added, sounding completely worn out. "Obviously, but what happened after that? Did you trip or something?" "Nope. Pain in my ribs spiked. Broken ribs are not fun." With a snort, Jiraiya said, "No kidding. Shikamaru, you can go to sleep. I'll carry you the rest of the way, and I'll wake you up when you can have more pain pills." With his eyes closed, Shikamaru said, "Thanks," and passed out after 3 minutes. Jiraiya looked curiously at it. "Hey kid, why are you so nice to Pineapple Head?" "Not Pineapple Head, Shikamaru. And, well, you see, because of my weight all the other kids teased me and didn't want me to play. But Shikamaru was different, he was always nice to me." "What about Naruto? Why is he doing this for him? Any ideas?" "When we were younger he was our friend, he still is. Shikamaru would help him with homework if possible, and I would take extra lunch. He always seemed to be eating or hungry." "I see, it was one of the scariest days was when he wasn't at the academy, and we couldn't find him at home." As they walked on, a friendly silence descended upon them. "It must have been," Jiraiya said. After an hour, Shikamaru was successfully woken up for his medication by Choji, who placed him on the bed. Shikamaru complained, "What? We're to the hotel already? Yay, and you're due for more pain pills. Oh great, they taste horrible." Jiraiya entered after the door opened and closed. "How is Pineapple Head doing?" "I can hear you, and not so great." As she handed over the pills and a glass of water, Choji muttered, "Well, with broken ribs and all this traveling, you'd think. Well, I'm going to go out and look for any sign of Tsunade. You stay here and do whatever you usually do, talk, eat, whatever." After 3 hours, when Jiraiya returned, he discovered both boys unconscious on one of the beds and 3 empty bowls on the bedside table. He assumed they had eaten dinner and that the food, along with the medication for Shikamaru, had quickly put them to sleep. With a sigh, he crouched down in his own bed. However, he sat up again when he heard movement and both boys sat up, clearly reacting to the sound the Sannin had made, even if they didn't want to. Shikamaru, who was clearly still half asleep and partially in la. Land from the medications, asked in a song, Like voice, back pretty late aren't you? Wah. Your medicines are working too well, quiet down and go back to sleep. Nay, sure, Z's, you too, he remarked, gesturing to Choji. With a sigh, the boy relaxed and fell asleep rapidly as well. Peace and quiet. When they woke up early the following day, Jiraiya put everything away, Choji went out to eat breakfast, and Shikamaru sat around waiting for his medications to take effect. They had been fed and were departing the town after another 30 minutes or so. For the next few days, the trio persisted in this manner, with Shikamaru pushing himself to the limit and occasionally beyond in an effort to keep them all moving forward. As long as Choji could carry his bag, he was okay, despite the pain. They wouldn't have to continue this pattern for long, though, because they eventually located her after nearly 3 days. How did they know that? Yay. Well, I had to kick them out because my hotel room was destroyed. And get this. They had the nerve to stay in town too. Thank you. Just get that woman out of this town. Sweat. Dropping, Jiraiya said, I'll do my best. He was going to try, but he was afraid that if he irritated her too much, she might send him abroad. Sadly, Shizune and Tsunade were seated at a table when they left the inn and went to the closest establishment that served sake. Shikamaru and Choji followed him as he approached, and they all took seats at the table. With pink cheeks and drooping eyes, Tsunade glanced up before lowering her gaze again. What do you want? Oh come on, can't someone come and see their old teammate? You have a look on your face, what do you want? 'Cause I probably won't agree. Well, if you really want to know, I have a few favors to ask you. Tsunade said, shoot, as she was bored. Well, back home, there are a few kids who need your help. No, I'm not going back there, ever. Jiraiya looked at her and said, but Tsunade, please, call one of them a special favor to me, your old teammate. With an annoyed expression, Tsunade asked, what kind of personal favor? Well, ya see, after 5 minutes. Tsunade was fine after being informed of the situation. How can it be politely stated? Pissed is a good way to put it. Ish. As she was around children, she stopped and punched a hole in the table instead of saying, that lying, conniving, poisonous, destructive, evil, double crossing, vile, horrible, idiotic, kidnapping, brainwashing, son of a, I'll help you. You're wrong when you say that it's probably only possible for me to do it, that is, if you want his mind to collapse, and him to go insane. You made the right choice to find me for this, but I still need one more thing before I'll go back. As Shikamaru put it, and what would that be? Quite dramatically, she said, I've got to go tell Orochimaru off. They discovered Shikamaru with cold chopsticks in hand and meat on the end after hearing a snore from the other side of the table. That is the weirdest thing I've ever seen the kid do. Choji remarked, well, it's Shikamaru, he's performed worse. It was clear that they were all thinking the same thing, even though nobody spoke. I won't ask, but he's dozed off in worse places. So do you say we all get a good night's rest and I guess start on our hunt for Orochimaru tomorrow morning? Sure. But hey, Miss Tsunade, can you maybe help Shikamaru at all? He got hurt pretty bad, and the only reason he actually came is because the pain meds wore off a bit before the first town. Sure. Why not, thanks. So, what's this brilliant plan of yours to give Orochimaru the beating of his life? Jiraiya inquired. Well, the truth is, he came to me a couple days ago with a deal. Tomorrow I'm supposed to meet him with my answer, and so I plan to use that to our advantage. You'll be about 2 minutes away, and I'll give you a signal by making a little dust cloud. Sound good? Sure. Now I'm going to go to sleep, good night. The following morning. Alrighty boys, up. No, was the collective groan or howl as Tsunade, the blonde she-devil of the morning, entered their room and prepared herself with buckets of water. How did she even get the lock picked so quickly? Shikamaru complained, I'm still injured. No, you aren't, I healed all your injuries. Right, crud, okay. I'm up. Good, see, and you two lazy butts better get up and follow the example of Pineapple Head here. Why does everyone I don't know very well insist on calling me Pineapple Head? Because your head looks like a pineapple, aren't Naras supposed to be geniuses or something like that? I'm a genius of strategy and information. Reading people not so much, unless it's Ino. Ino with a kunai pointed in my general direction means she's going to kill me, or at least make a decent attempt. Ino with an overly sweet smile wants a favor. Ino with a glare and a kunai means she's going to make an excellent attempt of killing me, and if I don't run immediately, it's very possible she'll succeed. You really need to work on your people's skills, don't you? Nah, not really. With a sigh, Tsunade threw the buckets of water onto Jiraiya, who was the only one still standing. Huh? Tsunade. After using quite a few, if not many, derogatory terms, Jiraiya finally concluded his tirade with, and she wonders why we sensei and I called her the she-devil of the morning. Tsunade snarled, don't you dare bring that up again. Jiraiya recoiled in terror. Okay, so perhaps it wasn't the best idea in the multiverse to say that tirade aloud, but what was done, and he couldn't undo it. It's really hard to come up with ideas worse than saying that aloud. Shikamaru and Choji watched casually from a corner of the room as Jiraiya and Tsunade got into a heated argument. Say, Shikamaru want to go get some barbecue? Sure, why not, they're just a little busy with their lovers' quarrel over there. Jiraiya and Tsunade shouted, what did YOUSAY? And left the hotel room, ignoring the commotion. Come on Choji, we'll put it on Jiraiya's tab or something. Sure, that was delicious, are you actually full? Yay, it's nice. When Shikamaru finally gave in and reclined in the chair, he had a beached whale expression. Jiraiya and Tsunade discovered them just in time. As soon as they identified the two boys, the store owner approached them. Ah, you must be the wonderful grandparents that these boys talked about. They said you would pay the bill. If Jiraiya had truly felt the need, he would have made a scene, but instead he sighed to himself and ignored it. We wouldn't even be on this trip if I had been keeping a closer eye on Naruto. I suppose it's payback for running off so much. He gave the man the big sum of money and a little extra to order breakfast for himself, Tsunade, and Shizune. The five of them left after breakfast to go to the location where everyone would be waiting for Tsunade's signal. Before reinforcements could arrive, they would leave Orochimaru as quickly as possible. So, everyone got the plan. Urea yelled, Inagu, and rushed to embrace her fiancé. Oh, you have no idea how much of a relief it is to have you back. The invasion, Naruto. He was captured. I heard it from Lord Orochimaru myself, and he saw it with his own eyes. I see, I'd heard rumors, you know, that he'd been taken during the invasion. I just wasn't sure if I should believe it. Though, there's good news. What kind of good news? Inagi nodded and said, well, you know the capture of the Uchiha? It's been moved up so we can get him sooner. The Sound 4 are going to be sent in, and their first priority is to grab him. So, we should have him back in less than 2 weeks. I just hope nothing happens to him before then. Me and you both. Naruto continued to sit quietly in his cell, which was really more of a cage to keep the Hidden Sound Village's ferocious snake in check. The village elders of Suna and Konoha had already met, and while there was still some resentment, at least there was no immediate threat of war between the villages. Naruto was aware of that by now, and he nearly gave the guard a snarky, obnoxious smile, but that would be too childish of him. He refused to go there. He nearly smiled because he had planted nearly 60 summoned snakes and knew there was unrest because he sent the snake his father had left with him to gather information from them all. He could tell that people were wondering if they would ever be able to go back to the way things were because they had a village that was about 1/3 smaller, no Hokage, almost no external defense, and no particularly friendly villages to turn to for assistance. Naturally, Naruto was unsure. They might quickly recover, rebuild, acquire new graduates, a powerful new Hokage, and even Suna as an ally, but he was reasonably certain that all of that would take longer than they had. He was fairly certain that everything would go smoothly in 2 or 3 weeks. The issue, however, was that they were running out of time before their precious, last loyal Uchiha betrayed them and was secretly removed from the village. And because everything was prearranged, he was aware that this would occur. The village of Otto had 2 plans. Either they would destroy the village during the exams, or they would do so later through discontent and dejection. Oh, and did it say that he would make his getaway with the Uchiha? This is going to work out perfectly, he thought with a sly smile. When an Anbu brought his food, basic bread, water, and grapes, he gave a small smile before turning his face back to neutral. It was food, so he didn't really care that there wasn't much to think about. He seemed to be constantly hungry for some reason. Since he used genjutsu to remove his mask, he had at least avoided having to reveal his face to them. They didn't appear to recognize him yet, so he could easily remain anonymous until the breakout. There was a rush of activity after Tsunade gave them the signal because Jiraiya and Shizune had left and were on the battlefield before Choji and Shikamaru had even started to move. Shikamaru became aware of their scheme. Well, what deceitful adults. They left us this far back so we would hopefully get there about the time the battle ended. But that's not fair. Naruto was, and is our friend. If there's going to be revenge on the guy who made him evil, then I'm going to be a part of it. I understand I feel the same way, but we have to think about this rationally. Perhaps, we should stay back far enough to be unnoticed, but close enough to see everything going on. Then jump in when someone needs help, huh? Pretty much. Lazy and simple, but effective, exactly the words I want to hear from everyone about plans. After 5 minutes. Sadly, there was nowhere for Shikamaru and Choji to assist, so they sat in their hiding place, bored to death. Says Shikamaru, after this want to play a game of shogi with me later, maybe I can get better. Sure, if this battle ever ends, after 5 more minutes. Make your move already. Boy, no wonder Asuma-sensei always falls asleep. Clack. After 10 minutes. Okay, you know what, I'm totally bored, can I take a nap? Sure. Great, wake me up if we're needed. After 10 more minutes. When Choji shook his friend and said, "Hey, Shikamaru," the boy sat up, completely awake, and immediately reached for a kunai. Bottle's over. Huh, though it does seem we can get in there and find out some stuff, said Choji. With a nod, they emerged from their hiding spot to listen in on the conversation. Since you beat me, I'll give you 2 scraps of information so long as they are reasonable. Alright. What did you do to Naruto, and since I'm sure you have a plan already, how do you plan to get him back? Well, the first one is simple. The few good things about your pathetic village he could think of were locked away, sealed in the deepest, darkest part of his mind. And the second, I do have a plan. It's one I'd already had in mind to finish crushing your pathetic village. It just works quite well with a rescue. There's no more for me to say now. Goodbye. Kabuto, we're leaving. The adults rested after the battle, but Shikamaru and Choji prepared to depart as soon as possible so they could get to the village and tend to all of Tsunade's patients. Well, then she wouldn't have as much time to figure out what they hadn't told her and run, and boy, would she run. When they eventually arrived in the village, Shikamaru went to see Naruto because the future Hokage had granted him permission. He asked if they would mind, and being very cunning, she said she didn't mind and that she would be around later. Shikamaru was obviously pleased about that, as it meant he wouldn't need Jiraiya's help to get past the Anbu. Hopefully. Naturally, Tsunade was led straight to the hospital, where Lee was already waiting. Naturally, a new issue had arisen, and everyone was in a state of hysteria, as if something had occurred while no one was looking, and when they did, it was over. Jiraiya left to gather information from the toads he had left around the village when he left, after Tsunade had arrived to see her patient. Oh yay, you bet something happened. Yes, okay. Well, I want to know what happened. Oh, right, he exclaimed, bouncing into the air. Well, you see, there were these guys, and they came into the village, and they went that way, and I followed them because they looked really suspicious. So I followed them because they looked suspicious, and so the suspicious guys, they went around, and I was going to stop following them soon because they weren't seeming suspicious anymore. And they sat down for tea, and I decided, well, nothing worth seeing here. But then Kakashi took an interest in them, and then Kakashi sent Kurenai and Asuma after them. And then there was a battle. And Guy even joined, and it was SSO cool. But what happened after that? Well, you see, after that they just left. They were saying something about finding the 9 tails later, or something like that. That was surprisingly helpful. I have a new mission for you. I want you to go find me Kakashi. Tell him I'll be in the T&I prison area. Okay. Yelled the toad, leaping to it. He sighed as he made his way toward the T&I cells, saying, "Hyper little thing." Unfortunately, an explosion interrupted his peaceful stroll. Ah, crap, that was probably. Shikamaru was shocked to learn that Naruto had just gotten away and that he was sitting there in the same spot as when they had gone to pick up Tsunade. He was finally up and moving, though he was moving rather slowly. This was likely due to the fact that he hadn't moved around much for nearly a week. It took him 2 days to leave, 3 days to get to Tsunade, 2 days with her, and 3 days to return to the village. This meant that he had been stiff for at least 5 days. "You're going a little slow there, are you stiff?" "A little," Naruto shot back, throwing a piece of glass at the other boy with a paper bomb. "Ah, well then maybe you should take moving around slow." "No way. I can't stand to stay too still. What the heck is going on in here?" As Tsunade stomped toward them, Shikamaru recoiled and jerked away from his confrontation with Naruto. Naruto even experienced a mild chill. "I know who you are," he burst into laughter. "Ha ha. So, you're the old person they. Ha 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 ha. Dragged in. Ha hey ha. To take that old geezer's place. Ha 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 ha. First of all, where do you get off calling me old? And second off, what do you mean dragged me in to take the old geezer's place?" Tsunade said, clearly trying to calm herself. He was barely standing, laughing hysterically, forgetting for a few minutes that he was actually a prisoner and that Tsunade was furious as she fought the urge to turn on the Nara behind her. "Oh come on, ha ha ha. They really are cowards. They didn't even tell you that my dad killed the Hokage, and that they dragged you here to take his place? Ha 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 ha, pathetic. Even I can face Araya after drenching her in cold water, or replacing her shampoo with hair dye. Even if I did get pinned to the wall for almost a week," she said. When she finally calmed down and gave Naruto a very stern look, it caused his steel to bend for a brief moment as he finished laughing. Then, he realized that Jiraiya and an Anbu were holding him and dragging him to a more secure cell while kicking and screaming. Tsunade let out a sigh of relief, but as soon as Jiraiya returned, she stiffened up once more. She glared at him with a truly evil and sadistic gleam in her eyes, and the man saw it and got a "ooh crap" look on his face. He was certain that she was enjoying this. Hey, what did you two talk about?" he inquired. "Oh, I don't know how you got me here to take care of patients, when the real goal was to make me Hokage, nothing much." "Look Tsunade. Just calm down, okay? We had to get you here somehow. Konoha needs a strong new Hokage, and I have other obligations. And the elders can't, they're too stuck up. If you don't take it, who knows what the village will become. I'll think about it, but you could have at least told me. But then you'd have been gone before I could explain." As she considered her brother and lover, she sighed, "You're probably right. I'll do it. I owe at least that much to those two, for even considering." She puckered up. "I need to have the kid sedated if I'm going to restore his mind, and also, I want you to go to the hospital and tell the sensei of that kid, I think his name is Guy or something, that I might have an idea on how to fix the damage done to his student." She was pointing to a random Anbu individuals present. The Anbu gave her a salute and departed with a, "Yes, ma'am," after appearing a little unsure before realizing that she had the authority to give orders. "But Tsunade, what about? I'll do what I have to do. That boy, his haircut might be weird, but he's a good kid. I can tell by the way he talks and moves. He has a fire in his eyes too." The following week went by swiftly, during which Tsunade treated her patients after being crowned the Hokage. It was hard because Naruto was thinking about firewalls that were surprisingly effective. Finding the seal and getting to his real mindscape was challenging, but nothing Tsunade couldn't manage. Then there was the matter of Lee and his surgery. She would perform it, of course, but she needed to overcome her fear of blood in order to do so. Shizune continued to be her assistant as usual, making sure she didn't get too wasted, throw her desk out the window, or punt all of her ninja into the mountains. Yes, it wasn't the best job to have, but Shizune accepted it and managed to make it work. And now there was another problem. Jiraiya had chosen to stay because he knew he had to be present when they attempted to retrieve Naruto, because he wouldn't allow them to take him away, and Sasuke was waning in his commitment and determination to control the cursed mark. At least for everyone but Shikamaru, he was now a Chunin, which was a positive development. However, for the time being, everything appeared to be going Konoha's way, but then something happened that rocked the entire Konoha population. Naruto sat there, purportedly sleeping, and although he appeared, sounded, and behaved like it, he wasn't. His snakes had informed him that the Sound 4 had arrived, which meant he would soon be saved. And before you know it, boom! Much of the surrounding wall either dripped or fell to the ground, and the door flew back, partially melting. With a sneer in his eyes and a broad smile, Naruto rose to his feet. At last, he was being freed from this foolish prison. The door was picked, the lock was picked, and the Anbu, unable to recover in time, were downed in 15 seconds. As fresh air slowly made its way through the room from the hole in the wall, Naruto emerged in all his black glory. Alright. So next we get my weapons and poisons, Sasuke, and then we get out of here. They said, yes sir, and took him away. Sasuke considered his options while sitting quietly in the moonlight. Eventually, he gave in and packed a bag before making his way to the gate. He found himself stopping to watch the smoke trailing up at that precise moment. There had been some kind of explosion, but he forced himself to stop watching as his thoughts returned to his initial goal of joining Orochimaru and gaining more power. He went to the gate, avoiding Sakura because he didn't want to speak to her at all. She was loud, annoying, and all she did was call his name. He kept a close eye on the village while waiting outside. At last, the one unexpected visitor arrived. Naruto. A hurriedly assembled team led by Shikamaru interrupted Naruto and the Sound Four as they were about halfway to the gates. Tenten, Shino, Choji, and Shikamaru were all present. Ooh, a few genin, O and Chunin are going to take out the Sound Four. Humph, how stupid do you get? Not very, considering we just want you. Sorry, but you can't have him. Lord Orochimaru would rather his son intact, though it's very unfortunate that you heartless Konoha shinobi killed him, and we were too late. Lady Kamichi will be very sad, especially after just getting her fiancé back, Kidomaru said with a grumble. There were? Huh? Naruto was already separated from the Konoha shinobi and caught between two factions that wanted to kill or capture him. He almost let out a sigh of relief when Sakin and Yukon moved and Hirobu fell off the rooftop and onto the ground. I thought we all agreed. Though I may agree he throws far too much power and authority around, and is a bratty child, I will not kill Lord Orochimaru's son. I am not as traitorous as that. Ah, so, that's how it is. I've had my suspicions, but that you'd actually attempt to first threaten, and then kill me, that is admittedly impressive, but it's stupid. Besides, can't let my sister find out I'm dead. 'Cause I won't be. Trust me when I warn you, I've only gotten more powerful since last time. True, but you've never been able to beat us on your own before. He said, maybe not, but if I go down, you're at least going down with me, you dirty, gullible, traitors. And then, while avoiding the Konoha ninja and preparing to flee, he whistled on the highest notes except for one that he skipped. Then, with explosive tags he had previously planted exploding, he sent a kunai, killing one of them and cutting the other two with poison kunai. Slowly, Tayuya said, it's not possible, You've never beaten us on your own before. Naruto pulled out the antidote as the aforementioned ally held off the genin, saying, I've never faced you without Sakin and Yukon before. And I had explosive tags planted on you, so I had the upper hand. So, tell me, is anyone else in on it? If you do and you're truthful, I'll give this to you and we can tweak the story a little, saying that one or two of them tried to kill me and you helped me dispose of them, or I can leave you to die. For a few seconds, Tayuya appeared to be thinking before the poison caused her to jump in agony. No one else was in on it. They weren't even sure we were actually going to go through with it. We made sure only we came so no one else would be a part of it, because a few people knew about it, but refused to agree. Knowing full well that Kidomaru was already dead, Naruto said, good, drink this, and when you're feeling better, go wait with the Uchiha, or if we're already moving, catch up to us quickly. I have a pit stop to make on my way out. Oh, and make sure at least Hirobu comes to his senses. After leaving Sakin and Yukon to hold off the genin until they were ready to depart and leaving Tayuya to fetch Hirobu, Naruto slipped away. He also left a clone covered in his own blood to hide his tracks and buy himself some time. He then headed for the Hyuga compound, where he found someone his father would value. The Naruto who should have been imprisoned was standing in front of Sasuke, and he had a person with him, or rather, he had a person on him, hanging limply on his shoulder. Sasuke stared in astonishment. The first thing that sprang to mind was what he said. Naruto, yep, why do you have that girl on your shoulder? Ah, Dad's wanted a Hyuga to study for a while. She was just the easiest target. Naruto laughed. Well, let's go. I won't get out of here before anyone figures it out and catches up, Sasuke replied. Jump, Naruto uttered. Good. You might not be half bad as an auto nin after all. What did you just? Better keep up, Uchiha, I'm fast, even with my baggage. With a growl, Sasuke trailed the marginally younger ninja through the forest, stopping approximately 5 minutes away. They would have waited just outside the village, but Ureya, Haku, Zabuza, and Inagu decided it would be more effective to wait closer to the border so that nothing could be easily pinned on the hidden sound village. And the reason Kabuto wasn't with them was because Kabuto had to take care of Orochimaru, who was back home, hurt. However, they never stated it that way, and anyone who might have the courage to do so would most likely die a slow and agonizing death. Haku studied the shrubs. I think I see them. Hinata Hyuga was walking through the bushes with a rustle, her eyes emotionless and without any kind of wakefulness. When they heard the whistling, they realized that she was being controlled and being forced to walk to her own torture. Urea and Haku approached and gave her a close look. She appeared to be okay. They looked at one another, then back down at the little girl, before setting her down and leaving. Zabuza also departed. Inagu stood guard over the border and the village walls from their mountain, and he was now watching the Hyuga girl. Because he would know if anyone approached the border too closely, unless it was someone they were expecting, they would be killed. He waited while observing the serene and magnificent forest that encircled Konoha. Shikamaru looked around. He thought he might have seen Naruto a minute ago. Jiraiya appeared beside the Chunin, and Shino, Choji, and Tenten trailed behind. Hey kid, what are you thinking? Well, I could have sworn he was here, but I didn't make it fast enough. The toad exclaimed, Jiraiya, Jiraiya, Jiraiya. I got Kakashi for you. Just exactly like you asked, as Kakashi, Kiba, and Akamaru approached from behind. I thought Kiba would be a help, so having tracking problems? Yes, can you summon a few dogs and have them scout the area? Jiraiya replied. Sure, Pakun said, looking up at Kakashi as he made the appropriate hand signals and called forth his dogs. What's up Kakashi? I need you to track a scent. Who is it? For a moment, Kakashi thought, well, if I would have to start somewhere, perhaps you should find the smell of snakes, and head after that. Shikamaru stated, I know that he was heading northwest. His tone had changed to one of, I don't want to keep sitting around, and he was being very serious at the moment. Pakun nodded, and after a half hour or so of sniffing, the dogs finally detected a scent. One of them informed Pakun, and the smaller dog sniffed a little to make sure. He grimaced as he turned to face them. Found it, but none of you are going to like this. Sasuke is with him, and that's not the only person. Kakashi's fists clenched. Sasuke, dang it, I warned him. That fool. Who else is with them? Pakun's eyes were bleak. I smelled Hinata Hyuga's scent. In addition to being confused, Kiba and Shino were furious. Kiba snarled. Why would Hinata be around them? When a few insects escaped from Shino's jacket and started toward the village, he was able to think more clearly. Tenten stated, we can't be sure yet. Choji said, all right, how are we going to approach this? Shikamaru rose from where he had been crouching. We'll follow them, and if anyone gets in our way we take them out. However, we can't let them get to the border. If I'm correct, then they're going to the land of waterfalls. This means that should they pass the border we'll lose them for at least as long as it takes to get permission to enter the country. Shino moved closer to the group, drawing interest. Hinata was kidnapped. I sent some bugs to investigate the compound. Apparently someone slipped in nearly undetected, and then summoned a large snake for the escape. I would assume Naruto is the one whom did so from the exit. They're still working on subduing the snake. He spoke quietly. Once more, Kiba lost his temper. He grabbed Shino's collar and yelled, how can you be so calm about this? While doing so, one must think about things such as this with a level head. If you are unable to at least somewhat control your emotions, then you should go home and wait for us to deal with this. Shino continued with the same calmness. Tenten let out a sigh. He's right. I know that whenever I'm sparring and I'm angry I do things I don't mean to, and I make mistakes I never would if I had fought with a level head. Sighing, it's not only dangerous for the angry fighter, but also for their allies. If you want to stay you need to keep a level head. Otherwise you'll do more harm than good. Jiraiya also got involved. Yay, and it's against the kid. He almost took me down in our fight. If it hadn't been for a 2-second slip of concentration, tripping him, and a poison kunai I'm not sure if I would've won or not. Alright. Kakashi responded, we should move out. Otherwise we'll miss them entirely. However, I'm going to head back to the village and ask Lady Tsunade about permission to enter Waterfall Country, but I'll leave my dogs here to lead you to our targets and rejoin you as soon as I can. All of them set off in different directions, each going somewhere. After nearly 10 minutes of whistling, Naruto paused next to Sasuke and sat down to replenish his oxygen supply. He was aware that they had been traveling for a number of hours and that it was almost 4 in the morning because of the time before they left. Sasuke was intrigued by something when he looked up. "How did you make her walk with that whistling?" Naruto grunted, beginning to lose his temper. "I used a special tag, activated it with a sound jutsu. Although it's very difficult if someone is awake. Our reinforcements should be here soon." Sasuke was nearly perplexed when Naruto responded to the sound of a bird tweeting, and then the other whistle responded. After a minute or so, 3 people came down, and Uraya concluded her bird tweet with a smile on her face. "Naruto!" she exclaimed, embracing him as he leapt to his feet. Sasuke got up and bided his time. Haku joined in, saying, "Hey, I want to give him a hug too." Uraya gave him a look that left Naruto wondering what he had done this time, and they embraced for a few minutes before separating. "You wouldn't believe how worried I was about you." "No, I think I can." She gave him a slap on the head. "No way, little brother." They started off with the Konoha shinobi getting closer after Naruto managed to escape a headlock. Inagu would go straight to the land of sound, while they would continue on toward the land of waterfalls. At least that was the original plan, and they didn't want to lose their valuable cargo. "Alright, let's head off to Inagu. We have to get situated. I think we need to move our formation a bit." Haku considered this for a moment. "What about Sasuke's curse seal?" "We can leave it be until we're home. It would slow us down too much, and the only reason it would be useful at all is if we get held up and are unable to get away. However, I don't think that'll be a problem." Before reaching Inagu, who was getting Hinata completely on his back, they ventured into the forest and spent roughly 10 minutes navigating through the trees. "Naruto. Glad to see you safe, Inagu. Alright, Sasuke and I are going to head towards the sound border together. We'll go a long way. Inagu, I want you to take the shorter way towards the borders since you're carrying her. Everyone else, I want to progress to Waterfall Country. Any objections?" "No sir." They all uttered at once. They shuffled around, dividing into their designated groups and preparing to split. "Great, if we can get away without any problems, we can be home free in 2.5 days. So, let's get this show on the road. If anyone runs into trouble, send out a bird call, and if someone can echo, do so and send someone to help Inagu. You will be our go-between for help, but you are not to engage in battle if you can help it." Naruto and Sasuke, Inagu and Hinata, and the final group, which included Uraya, Haku, and Zabuza, all departed. Following their charge, Commander, Tayuya, Hirobu, Saken, and Yukon left the village. The other two, who had been harboring rebellious thoughts, were certain that they would no longer mind if Naruto were to lead the hidden sound in the future. They wouldn't contradict him, for sure. They weren't suicidal, they were rebellious. As the Leaf Shinobi approached them, they paused atop a mountain and observed the trees rustling slightly. Tayuya walked over to the 2 smaller groups of chakra and said, "Come on. Let's go." Tayuya and Hirobu attended one, while Saken and Yukon attended another. 2 shinobi approached from behind Naruto and his charge, and he stopped. With a kunai in hand, he spun around and asked, "Who's there?" Sasuke moved behind the 2 shinobi, but Naruto relaxed as much as usual when he saw who it was, and the Uchiha let his guard down a few millimeters. "Ah, the last of our reinforcements, good." When the shinobi reached the summit of the mountain, Hirobu and Tayuya drew their guards. After considering their options, Naruto decided on the 2 most likely options. Either they'll have to split into groups of 2, or they'll all come after a single group together. Either way, they'll miss us. Naruto tensed up suddenly due to an instinct that let him move just before he was ensnared by shadow tendrils. Choji and Shikamaru came into view. He had anticipated teams of 2, but something didn't feel quite right. Nevertheless, he didn't have time to look into it because Shikamaru needed a boost, and Choji rolled towards him, extending Shikamaru's shadows. Naruto leapt back again as the shadows grew wider. Hirobu and Tayuya leapt in front of him, forming a wall. "You two should go. We'll keep them at bay for as long as we can," Hirobu responded. Naruto said, "Thanks." His expression was not quite sincere, but it was close. "Let's go, princess." "What the heck do you mean by princess?" When Shikamaru and Choji heard Naruto and Sasuke arguing until they were no longer audible, they couldn't help but smile. As Hirobu approached, Shikamaru leapt back and spread his shadow. They would not have a difficult time defeating their opponents because they were already battered and still partially affected by the poison. Jiraiya followed the trio, but he didn't see Naruto or Sasuke. When he was certain, he turned around and returned to the mountain. Jiraiya interrupted, "Kiba, have you found Naruto?" as Tenten dashed through the bushes. "We found them. They're over in that group," she exclaimed. "Good. Show us where to go." It was long before Naruto called them out that he saw their shadow. The open field they had arrived at was too wide and lacked enough spots for him to climb, hide, and launch an attack, so he didn't want to fight there. However, as soon as they entered the forest, he turned to face the individual, pushed Sasuke forward with a whistle, and pulled a kunai out of his pouch. His tone was almost like a song as he said, "Who's there, I wonder," slowly. Naruto casually tossed the kunai and remarked, "Who could be hiding in the trees? Little Jen and Buggy spy." "Yes, that's who's hiding." He drew another after it fell out of the wood. He shouted the final line, come out, wherever you are," as he spun and threw a kunai, which this time embedded itself in the wood where his shadow had just been, nearly to the handle. "You have an interesting throwing style, hello Shino. Good to see you again Naruto. I can't say I feel the same." "I see. No you don't. Everyone always acts like they understand but only a few actually do, and you aren't one of them." "Very well then, shall we just fight?" "Sure, why not?" They went to meet Inagu after Araya heard him whistle, but the whistle had not originated with him. So they took a different route. It appeared that their only concern was apprehending Naruto and Sasuke, and they were making every effort to locate them. After spotting their trail, the group tried to pretend that Sasuke was with them in order to buy as much time as possible. However, he eventually realized that they were missing both boys and turned around, so they hurried through the forest in the direction of the explosions that only Naruto, the pyro, snake expert, could set off. Sweat trickled down Shikamaru's and Choji's brows as they panted. In order to question their opponents later, they had rendered them unconscious and firmly bound them to a tree. Smoke rose as an explosion sounded ahead, and Jiraiya approached them. As Kiba and Akamaru made their way across the clearing toward the battle, Tenten took out a small first aid kit and bandaged them as best she could. Jiraiya checked to make sure they were okay before continuing. Naruto waited to see if Shino would be able to get to his feet. However, he had serious doubts about it. In fact, he was considering the possibility that Shino had completely stopped breathing. The other boy's clothes were tattered, and his forehead had a nasty gash. The blast that Naruto had created had also blown off his sunglasses. Naruto wouldn't be shocked if his opponent died because 10 explosive tags had been used in all. Internal conflict. Bubblekin's 10-10. Oh noes. Should I kill Shino or not? But he's so cool. Just as his backup arrived, Naruto started to leave. "Good, you're here. I need you guys to hold off those that come for about 15 minutes while I go find Sasuke, then fall back and head after me. If possible take out some of them," said Naruto. Then he vanished in a rush of wind. Kiba burst through the foliage, saving the three from having to wait long. He looked at Shino's injuries and saw him lying on a heap of rubble, unconscious. He snarled in rage, dropped to his knees, and Akamaru leapt on top of him, turning him into another Kiba. He yelled, "Fang over, Fang," and the two of them vanished into a single, whirling storm of death. When they ceased spinning, Haku used a rapidly forming icy hold on both of them as the three dispersed. Knowing that Araya could care for him, at least temporarily, Zabuza did nothing. As the jutsu broke and Akamaru turned back into a dog, her voice echoed, and Kiba's vision gradually became blurry before eventually disappearing. "Alright Kiba, when I tell you to you will pull out a kunai and throw it at anyone who is moving towards you," she replied. Jiraiya broke through the foliage, and Kiba just stood there, understanding the commands he was giving in his hypnotic trance. Now, the mesmerized ninja produced a kunai, aimed it, and hurled it directly at the Sannin, who was unable to block it. After Tenten completed tending to Shikamaru's and Choji's injuries, two of them proceeded. In an attempt to locate Hinata, Tenten pursued the final two chakra signatures. But what Shikamaru and Choji discovered was something they wished they could ignore. When Naruto eventually caught up to Sasuke, they resumed their journey toward the border. Sasuke was wary. He sensed that they were not telling him anything, but he had no intention of asking. He was skeptical that they would inform him. Naruto pushed Sasuke into the water and then dove in himself, saying, "Okay, we're going to use this river." They started swimming down the stream because, even though it was only around 11 in the morning, the water was reasonably warm. At one of the highest points, they climbed out and lay on the ground for a few minutes, struggling to breathe. Sasuke remarked, "I wonder how those three are doing." Despite appearing and sounding as though he fully trusted their abilities, Naruto remarked, "I'm sure they're fine. That's my sister, my sensei, and one of my teammates you're talking about. Alright, come on princess." Sasuke complained, "Why do you keep calling me princess?" "Because I'm saving you from that village and taking you away with me, so obviously I'm the prince, which makes you the princess." "What kind of logic is that?" "My logic? Well, you have stupid logic." "But how can logic be stupid? Isn't it based on facts?" "But you're using no facts." "Yes I am. Because I'm saving you from that village and taking you away with me, so obviously." Naruto was interrupted by Sasuke, who said, "Can we just walk in silence?" "No way." Sasuke moaned inwardly. He couldn't even comprehend how Orochimaru, or anyone else, could tolerate the child. With a sigh, Inagu put Hinata down. It was hard to carry someone, especially this long. Sakin and Yukon simply followed him as he grabbed a snack and ate it before putting Hinata back on his back and continuing on his way to the border. When someone emerged from the bushes behind Tenten, she stopped her journey towards the three chakra signatures and spun around, holding a scroll in one hand and a kunai in the other. "Oh, Neji, it's just you. Tenten, what are you doing?" "I'm looking for Hinata." "As am I see. Well, how about you go find her, and I go back and help. Goodness knows they need it." "Alright. I'll come and help once I have her." Tenten called, "Okay, see you later, Neji." And she leapt back into the trees, heading back to the battle. The kunai in Jiraiya's stomach moved, causing him to wheeze. He briefly saw black spots in his vision as more blood poured from the wound, but he quickly stabilized and cautiously pulled out a kunai. "Take the kunai out." When she said it, Kiba moved forward. "I don't want to hurt you, kid." Wailing as he attempted to persuade Kiba to stop, Akamaru pursued his master. "He can't hear you. He's under a type of hypnosis which is fueled by chakra. He only listens to me." Unwilling to injure the genin, Jiraiya took a painful step back and Kiba stopped, reaching for the kunai. His vision went black again, remaining somewhat dim, but more than anything else, the blood loss was causing him to begin to lose consciousness. At last, Akamaru leapt to his feet and bit Kiba's hand, which had been groping for the kunai. When Kiba regained consciousness, he saw Jiraiya in that shape and was unaware of what had transpired. He was aware, nevertheless, that these individuals were to blame for Shino and Jiraiya's severe injuries. Jiraiya was able to reach the side of the fight and attempt to stop the bleeding, and Kiba turned just as Shikamaru and Choji appeared. He hoped he could finish it soon enough. "Hey! Wake up!" Jiraiya thought. "I must have died and gone to heaven," when he woke up and saw a lovely girl. "You need to fight. Or perhaps not." She gave him a slap. "Get up." "Ow," he whispered. "We need your help, please get up." Alright. He slowly rose from the floor and felt the improvised stitches pulling at his wound. But now that he was not pumping blood, he could handle that. He drew a kunai after Tenten helped him up. He threw it at the big man after he had perfected his aim, and it struck his target in the leg, briefly pausing the opposing side of the fight. However, Jiraiya was suddenly attacked after the battle was redirected. "Hey, you kids, get out of here. Go find Naruto and the brat," he yelled. Choji shouted, "But will you be okay?" "I'll be fine." As she blocked another senbon, Tenten called, "I'm staying here for now, I'll send Neji your way when he gets here." "Alright, Choji, Kiba, let's go," exclaimed Shikamaru. Jiraiya remarked, "You're a brave little girl, you know that?" "I have to be. I'm on Gai-sensei's team." "True to that. Do you think you could get me over to take care of Shino?" "Sure. Just do what I say." "Yes sir." Following Akamaru's sense of the two boys, Kiba, Shikamaru, and Choji leapt through the trees. When they reached the river, they halted. Shikamaru waited a minute after inserting his hand. He stated, "They went downstream." Kiba questioned, "Why do you say that?" "Because, this current is so strong that it would be a big pain in the butt to swim up, and it runs away from the village," Shikamaru clarified. Kiba sighed. Enough reason for me, so long as we find them. Naruto might be my friend, but he hurt Shino. I won't just let that slide. Choji remarked, we agree with you, Kiba. Shikamaru just gave a nod, then pushed the other two in and dove in after them. After 5 minutes or so of swimming down the river, Kiba saw that a rock was unusually wet and they jumped out. When they arrived, they discovered only the faintest indications that the two boys had been there, which came from a tiny water holding dip in the rocks that shouldn't have been there in the first place. They pursued the scent and eventually located the two. Tenten checked his pulse and yelled, Shino, to see if he was even responding. He didn't answer, but she could tell he was seriously injured because of his weak pulse. As she had suspected, she felt his head gently and felt bumps from a hard blow. Master Jiraiya. I have to take him to the hospital. Please give me the cover I need. Jiraiya said, of course, and landed in front of the two genin. Tenten took out a scroll that contained an extra set of clothes after discovering 2 sticks that were about the same length. She gently dragged Shino onto it after taking out the 2 shirts that were there and strung them on the sticks. She then laid it parallel to him. Although she would have preferred not to move him at all, she was terrified that he would just pass away if she didn't. She grabbed him by the head and pulled him at a speed she shouldn't have, but the adrenaline in her system likely gave her the strength she required. In a few seconds, she pulled him from the clearing and far from the fighting. She had met Gaara, Tamari, and Kankuro in just 30 minutes. As Gaara and Tamari proceeded to assist Jiraiya, Kankuro assisted her in carrying him back. She gasped, thank you for helping me. No problem. The only priority for me right now is to get Buggy back to the village. Kankuro replied. Though I wonder what exactly did this to him. If I had to take a guess, I would say, explosion, and after the amount of smoke floating into the sky a big explosion, probably 5 or more tags. Tenten gave a little laugh when Kankuro said, 5 or more, isn't that overkill? Maybe to normal people, but we're ninja, there is no overkill. That's true, there's only alive and dead. When Inagu saw Neji and the other Hyuga approaching the man who had abducted Hinata, he reached into one of his pouches to retrieve an object. He slowly withdrew his hand and took out a whistle. However, one of them gently swung a fist at him, forcing him to move before he could blow it. Interesting. Well, I would love to stay and play, but I have orders not to get involved in a fight if I don't have to. One of them said, give back Lady Hinata and we'll be on our way. I'm so sorry, but I'm not allowed. You see, Lord Orochimaru's wanted a Byakugan for so long, that if I were to give her up and go back empty-handed, I'd be in a large amount of trouble. He raised the whistle to his lips and blew it out. It took a moment, but his attackers' heads began to ring, rendering them helpless for roughly 30 seconds as he managed to get away. Since Kiba had left his coat behind to keep it out of the way and was determined to beat Naruto to a pulp, Shikamaru and Choji didn't do much for the first 10 seconds. The arm that Lee's weights had broken, however, snapped again with a sickening crack. This time, though, it was much worse because the bone was visible coming out of his arm. But he didn't notice all that much. Choji grew and rolled in Naruto's direction, but the blonde simply stepped aside, using the momentum from pushing Kiba into the line of fire to propel him forward. They essentially switched places. Choji was about to bowl Kiba over when Shikamaru intervened and stopped him. Kiba screamed, "What the heck, man?" Choji returned to his usual self, "Sorry. Just squish me, why don't you?" Naruto called out, "Hey, you're all still in a fight, you know." Shikamaru said, feeling ignored? A bit, yay. Shikamaru remained behind and attempted to catch him in the shadows as Choji and Kiba charged him. Kiba fell like a stone, exhausted and in agony, after Naruto punched him in the ribs, but Choji took a good blow to the stomach. Trying to catch his breath, he staggered back a few steps and held his stomach. "You're not bad, not a lot of people actually managed to hit me," he replied. Shikamaru remarked, "You're not so bad yourself." After releasing his hold on Choji's stomach, Naruto charged him, knowing that there was too much fat there to seriously harm him. At the last second, Naruto swept his feet behind Choji and lowered the first he had drawn, causing the other boy to collapse. He began to rapidly stand up after falling like a bag of potatoes. It was not fast enough, though, because Naruto dropped 3 explosive tags, which detonated. The conflict went on until at last, Choji and Shikamaru awoke drowsily. "Man, my head hurts." Why are we still alive anyways? I don't know, Choji. Look at the rope, Shikamaru said, glancing down after scanning the area. Yay, he only tied us up instead of killing us, Choji replied. No, look at how it's wrapped and knotted. Choji looked. It's the same as when we were kids, he admitted, his face lighting up with realization. Yay, when we used to play capture tag, Naruto always won though. Kiba joined them from the nearby tree. The brown-haired boy flinched as his arm shifted and the rope pushed against his chest. This means that the Naruto that we all knew is still in there somewhere. But I still won't forgive him for the way he hurt Shino, he said. How long have you been awake? About a minute. Choji inquired. Do you think that some of the stuff Tsunade did change him a bit back to normal? Who knows, said Shikamaru and Kiba. When Shikamaru asked, Kiba, are you burned? Yes. Choji, how about you? Yay, I've got a broken or bruised rib, a broken arm, 3 broken fingers, a bloody nose, and more bruises than I can count, stated Shikamaru. I'm burned, but other than that I'm relatively fine. Broken arm, again, I think I have a couple fractured ribs, some bruises. Guys, I'm sorry, I was being so brash, and did exactly what I was warned against. I let my emotions control me. If it had been Choji he hurt that bad, I would have done the same thing. About 10 minutes after pushing Sasuke forward, Naruto caught up to him. At first, the boy with the raven hair had resisted, but Naruto was so determined to keep him going that Sasuke had to eventually move on. And he did, traveling roughly a mile before pausing to allow Naruto to catch up. As they strolled in silence, Sasuke observed that Naruto appeared to be distressed. Something happened back there. Naruto gave him a fierce look. Snappily, no, nothing, he said. Grumpily, fine, just asking, Sasuke said. Naruto jumped into the trees and took off, saying, let's go. Sasuke also leapt into the trees, pausing to catch up and match his speed. Oh no. How come I couldn't kill them? Later, they will only be an annoyance. They could have woken up and seen me, and those knots were so bad. Dang it. I mean, what was I thinking? Buggy didn't cause me any trouble. 5 minutes later, a persistent ache in Naruto's left ankle jolted him out of his reverie. When he hit it, it became much more intense. Hey, princess, let's take a break. My name is not Princess, and why? That battle must have tired me more than I thought, and I kind of need to take a restroom break. Sure, whatever, Sasuke remarked glumly. After exchanging glances and nodding, Uraya, Haku, and Zabuza abruptly withdrew. After successfully holding Jiraiya at bay for approximately 30 minutes, Naruto gave them the order to go find him. They came to a halt when a high-pitched, sharp whistle sounded. Zabuza swore. That's Inagu, Sakin, and Yukon. Uraya, you should go and help them. You can meet us in Sound Country as soon as you pass the border, and we'll keep a watch on it. Uraya gave a nod. All right, she concluded, but please make sure Naruto makes it home safe. Haku and Zabuza saluted and said, yes ma'am. Uraya said, okay, I'll see you in Sound. To assist her fiancé, she turned and left the group. All right, think we're good to go, sensei? Yep, let's go, Haku. They started up the trail that had been left and headed into the trees. Tenten entered the village with Shino and another ninja he vaguely recognized assisting her in carrying him on a makeshift stretcher just as Kakashi reached the village gate. Kakashi-sensei, she exclaimed, her voice nearly exploding with panicked energy as the relief seeped into it. I need you to get a medical nin and doctors. Suddenly, Kakashi left to retrieve the aforementioned staff. When he first arrived at the hospital, he was certain that there were at least a few medical nin working there. He approached the poor front desk nurse and gave her a loud, somewhat frightening order to get as many medical nin out to the North Village Gate as possible in 3 minutes or less. He then made a second appearance in Tsunade's office. Lady Hokage, we need your expertise. North Gate. Shino Aburame has been very severely injured and needs medical assistance immediately. All right, Shizune. A second later the woman rushed in. Yes, Lady Tsunade. I want you to gear up as fast as you can. Take a medical team and go with Kakashi. I can almost guarantee you'll be needed. After saying, yes ma'am, Shizune turned and departed, returning 3 minutes later with a full load of weapons, medical supplies, and the typical Konoha garb. 2 ninja who had just returned from a mission were behind her. They all left the office to help the retrieval team after Kakashi waved them away. Temari and Gaara reached the battlefield. Since his bleeding had lessened, Jiraiya sat for a few minutes while he finished bandaging himself. Before she left, Tenten had managed a few stitches and administered some basic first aid to the wound. Jiraiya would be well enough to fight again after a night's sleep. He was a little taken aback by their guests when he looked up. He questioned, "What are you kids doing here?" Gaara said, "We've come to assist you." That was fast. Temari acknowledged his suspicion and nodded. "Oh, well, we were coming to the village on a diplomatic trip. But when we heard about your issue, we offered to help. Besides, what's a better way to strengthen relations?" "You have a point there. Alright, give me a minute to try and calculate this. 1 down, 1 with 3 ahead, though probably down after the dust cloud from a little bit ago, and the kids are still on the run. Dang, we're not looking too likely to succeed." "Well, it seemed that the Hokage was beginning to start making a team of reinforcements," Gaara replied. "I hope there are medics in that team. Alright, let's get headed off, we need to go and check on those kids." Jiraiya got up after the 2 Sand siblings nodded, and they started to walk in the direction of the 3 who had gone ahead. The 3 were tied to a few trees and appeared to be severely bruised in more ways than one when they arrived 10 minutes later. Jiraiya inquired, "What happened?" Shikamaru let out a sigh. "Well, we got our butts kicked, and woke up about half an hour ago if the sun is anything to go off of. But it should take them at least another day to make it. And I think I might have managed to slow them down. Naruto's adrenaline levels should be going down soon." Naruto winced as his ankle ached once more as he stood a few trees away from Sasuke. After he sat down, he removed his boot and leg warmer. He tested for a break after discovering an ugly bruised spot that had slightly changed shape. He had to bite his lip to stop yelling as soon as he attempted to move his ankle in a particular way. "Well, this is really awful," angrily, he thought. Probably because he had been almost silent for a few minutes, he heard Sasuke get up on the other side of the bushes and start walking in Naruto's direction. "Hey, Naruto," he said, his voice irritated, "are you almost done?" "Yay, your voice sounds weird, are you sure?" Sasuke sounded suspicious now. "Dang it, I must keep him off my case in this regard." "I'm fine. Just give me another minute." Naruto screamed as loudly as he could manage. He took a pill that would help block some of the pain and took out some basic medical supplies. He then put his boot back on and wrapped his ankle tightly. To prevent him from moving it too much, he also stuffed some bandages inside his boot. After testing the amount of movement he would still receive, he decided it was sufficient and pushed a stick on each side. Naruto got to his feet and put his weight on it. Even with the medication, the wrap, and the half splint, the pain persisted, but it was definitely less severe than it had been. He put the leg warmer back on and left the brush, saying, "That'll have to do." However, when he sat down again on the opposite side of the tree, Sasuke appeared perplexed and said, "We're waiting for Araya, Zabuza, and Haku." "But why?" I'm all out of explosive tags. I would think that someone grabbed a stack from home. They're specially made by me," Sasuke said, sounding a little frustrated. Whatever. Naruto could only surmise that he was more annoyed by Naruto's propensity to dominate everyone, even his peers and superiors. Even so, he was certain that Sasuke had started to regard him as superior. He could still feel the pain, "So I need to get my ankle checked out. I'm fairly certain it's broken." He hoped that the painkillers he took would help him deal with the constant throbbing pain, at least until he had time to release the fox's chakra. Despite his best efforts to push it to the back of his mind, he was unable to get it to go away. "Hey, Naruto, princess. We're outta here," Haku exclaimed. "What is it with you people? My name is Sasuke. Stop calling me princess. And how do you even know about that?" "Oh come on, you're the damsel in distress, and we're taking you away from this horrible place. So obviously you're the helper." "Oh, just shut up, I shouldn't have asked." Naruto and Sasuke got up and fled into the trees. Naruto inquired, "So what's so urgent? We aren't sure how fast our pursuers are right now. Also, your sister had to go and assist Inagu. I would assume he has the entirety of the Hyuga clan attacking him by now. However, Sakin and Yukon are out there." "Yay, alright. Let's get to the border as fast as possible. Once we're over it, they can't touch us without causing some sort of incident." Everyone was exhausted, and Naruto had declared that it was time to stop, so they kept going through the trees for another hour or so before stopping once more. Thus, they had. Kid, sometimes I feel like you have way too much authority. With a cool, somewhat humorous, yet serious tone, Naruto questioned, do you now? You don't happen to be planning to assassinate me too, do you? No, I don't. Does someone else? They did, however they're taken care of now. Who? Inquired Haku. I said I wouldn't tell anyone, so I won't. The threat is neutralized now, so there's no need to go back on that agreement. Anyways, we should all get some sleep before it gets light. I'll stay up and switch with Princess in a while. Zabuza laughed. He liked Naruto's peculiar habit of giving people unflattering but appropriate nicknames and watching how long it took for someone to attempt his murder for fun. MWA, ha, 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 Google eccentric. Alright, then, but we should get moving as soon as it begins to get light. I'm not Princess. Continuing to speak to the others, Naruto disregarded Sasuke and said, yep, so get the most of your 2.5 hours of sleep. In the next 15 minutes, Sasuke was drifting and Haku and Zabuza were sleeping with their backs to each other. Naruto started, or rather, completed, checking his ankle as soon as he was certain that no one else was awake. Just by looking at it, he could tell that it had swelled significantly since the last time. After a few minutes of painfully shifting it around to try to maintain some mobility, he sighed and started taking care of it for the time being. Well, this is just great, he muttered. Naruto concluded his check by taking another pill and waiting for it to take effect before waking Sasuke. Oh well, he muttered, got to get these guys home safely first. He saw that because he had taken full medication and managed a proper splint, he could at least walk a little less painfully. Hey, Princess, get up. Right, Sasuke said, leaning against the tree and sitting upright. Now that he was fully awake, Naruto sat down at his tree and closed his eyes, feeling at ease. He fell asleep at once. Sasuke listened to Naruto snore while he sat in his watch position. It must have reminded him of their time together in the academy. Even in the academy, the entire class could hear him snoring. Does he ever stop? Sasuke leapt to his feet and began beating up a nearby tree as stealthily as possible. Before long, punches and kicks had worn a dent into the wood in the same places. He sat down again because he was breathing a little more heavily than normal. It wasn't light yet, but he guessed it would be only 20 minutes away. He thought that sounded correct. He got up and stretched before approaching Haku and Zabuza, who awoke just as fast as he did. He decided not to wake up the blonde control freak just yet, so he turned around. Of all of them, he had slept the least and most likely needed it. Haku looked as well and discovered that their sensei was correct when they said, "Hey Haku, something about Naruto looks different." They took a minute to identify the difference, and they found that his left lower calf was protruding. Think he got injured and is being an idiot and not saying a word? Haku inquired. Probably, said Sasuke. Hey Naruto, it's time to get up, Haku said, tapping his left boot's bottom. It's getting light blonde. Huh? Wah. Naruto leapt to his feet and landed with a graceful landing. Zabuza inquired, is your ankle okay? Yes, it's fine, why do you ask? Because it looks like it's swelling, or you shoved a bunch of stuff in the shoe, Haku replied. It's fine. He leapt off that ankle after Haku kicked him. It hurts, doesn't it? Naruto clenched his teeth and exclaimed, yes, because you kicked me. After a brief pause to allow the throbbing to subside, he placed the limb back down. Haku shoved him forward at that point. Ouch, dang it. What the heck is wrong with you, Haku? See, I knew it hurt. Know it. Hey, we've got to get moving. I'll just carry you the rest of the way to Sound. Put me down right now. I think your father would prefer you get back home with injured dignity and limb, than not at all, replied Zabuza. He'll forgive my disobedience of orders. You people, cruel I say. Whatever, she turned to face Sasuke, who was clearly laughing. Stop laughing, and let's go, princess. Sasuke's attitude abruptly changed, and he just complained because he knew they would most likely never stop. However, since he had selected this, it might be wise to avoid getting overly worked up over a nickname. Following the smoke that was slowly drifting into the sky at the horizon, Kakashi, Shizune, Tenten, Kankuro, and 4 medical nin emerged from the North Village gate. All they could hope for was that everyone was alive. Note that the in this scene indicates that the speech stops when there is a space at either end. Hey, Are you okay? A blurry figure extended a hand to him as he looked up. With some hesitancy, the boy accepted the hand and was hauled off the ground. He turned to see another hazy figure, slightly larger than the first, chasing away the older children who had been assaulting him just moments before. Those kids aren't nice. So, what's your name? I'm Naruto, Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Naruto. The bigger figure said, Hey, I chased those kids away. Are you okay? Naruto gave a nod. This is Naruto, Naruto, this is. A little bashful, Naruto said, Nice to meet you. Hey, wait up. Come on, Naruto, I thought you would have sped up a little for some ramen. Yay, I'm just tired, sorry, I am not. I'm not that. Do you think he's okay? Why are you asking us? With Sasuke and Zabuza clocking over their heads, Haku shot back, I don't know. I just need someone to know. A glaring light struck Naruto's eyes and deep into his skull, causing him to groan in his mind. How could so much light be produced? Oh right, the sun. Naruto, are you okay? Yay, you were muttering in your sleep. Was I? Inquired Naruto. And yay sensei, I'm fine. Oh, now I'm sensei. Naruto chuckled and said, Huh? Oh, did I call you sensei? I meant underling, subordinate, minion, you know. What did you, say that again, pipsqueak? Underling, subordinate, minion, inferior, follower, must I go on? I don't have to carry you, you know that right? Naruto sounded happier than ever as he said, okay. On second thought, anyway, Haku cut in, before we leave, eat something. Naruto was carried by Zabuza once more, this time on a piggyback to give him a slightly more dignified appearance, but, much against his will, they proceeded with their race for the border after he finished eating his sandwich and having a small lunch shoved onto his lap. They could go home once they arrived and wouldn't have to worry about their assailants. By the way, Naruto, I hope you realize that Jiraiya guy's spies already found our newest base. We had to move again. But don't you worry, Uraya got all of your stuff. But at this rate we're going to have to build more bases. That, or move into old ones. Great, they kept talking until nightfall arrived and they decided to call it a night. They had no choice but to do it. They were all completely worn out from fighting and traveling, and they needed a little more sleep. They made another trip the following day, albeit at a slower pace. They were fairly certain that they wouldn't be caught again because they hadn't encountered much opposition, and if they were, Sasuke could take Naruto and flee. They wouldn't be pleased with that, but... Zabuza put me down. No way, kid, you'll just slow us down. My ankle is fine now. Eh? Naruto said, somehow maintaining a completely straight face, Mr. Foxy. Kins. I really struggled to maintain a straight face. Ah. Zabuza finally got it. I see now, alright, he said, setting Naruto down. Before they could go much further, they were stopped by 4 Hyuga, who were easily recognized by their appearance. With his arms crossed, Naruto exclaimed, Oh, now it's getting fun. Naruto, you have the weirdest idea of fun, Haku replied. Do I, Haku? Yes, most people don't find beating someone else up, and getting beat up fun. I like the challenge, plus I don't usually get beat up. Ah, that makes sense. Anyways, you two boys go ahead, and we'll take care of these guys. Taking Sasuke by the arm, Naruto exclaimed, Okay, princess. We're off, and they started to leave. However, Naruto issued a final command. Retreat if you need to. Sasuke and Naruto could see the border, they would be safe in just a minute. Stop, Naruto, and you too, Sasuke. However, they continued running and were nearly there when Choji jogged up behind them and Jiraiya flickered in front of them. With a sigh, Naruto crossed his arms. Well, I guess there's no escaping it. We're going to have to fight Sasuke. All right then. Sasuke exclaimed, with a slightly joyful tone. He glanced at the rivals. Naruto stepped menacingly toward Jiraiya and said, You take Mr. Genin back there. I'll get rid of this nuisance once and for all. The battle then started. By the time Uraya arrived, Sakin and Yukon were essentially dead and she had to avoid the scene in order to get to Inagu. Perhaps fighting wasn't the right word to describe their encounter with an enraged Hyuga mob. Like a bird, she whistled, and shortly after improving her hearing, she could hardly hear a response from 7 miles away. On her way there, she discovered Inagu tending to a knife wound on his left leg. Beside him, still unconscious, lay Hinata. After helping him bandage his wound, they set out once more, Inagu still carrying Hinata, but this time they were considerably slower than before. Despite her reluctance to admit it, Uraya was starting to believe that they would have to abandon their cargo and flee. She kept her thoughts to herself because she was certain her fiancé shared them. Stop. Uraya identified the Hyuga as one of the genin who had taken the test when he dropped in front of them. Hey there brat, didn't think I'd be seeing you again. What was your name again, Eiji? Give back my cousin. Oh, she's your cousin, that makes sense. Uraya and Inagu exchanged a quick look. Both of them were in no great shape to fight, and they could hear the rest of the Hyuga crowd approaching. As he removed the girl from his shoulder and held her bridal style, Inagu appeared somewhat remorseful. He shouted, "Catch!" and threw her in Neji's direction. He caught her and remained upright. He examined her face to confirm that it was indeed Hinata. The remaining Hyuga had arrived by the time Neji looked back up, and the two sound nin had vanished. After confirming that the remaining ninja who had pursued him were returning to the village, Neji departed to help the others. After all, he had a duty to keep to his teammate. Shizune, Tenten, Kakashi, Kankuro, and the other medical nin were astounded by the extent of the damage. Even from a distance, Shikamaru and Kiba appeared to be in pretty bad shape as they lay next to a tree, both of them breathing heavily. Akamaru, looking defeated, hobbled up to them and dragged Shizune to his master Tamari, who was waiting for them and watching over the area in case an enemy decided to kill them. Everyone hurried to them, and the medical staff immediately began repairing them as much as they could. Where is Master Jiraiya and Choji? Kakashi asked, bending down. Shikamaru was unconscious due to the excruciating pain of his arm and his ribs being broken again. Kiba's situation wasn't much better. Tamari responded while standing next to a tree. They went ahead along with Gaara. All right, Kankuro, Tenten, Tamari, Shizune, we should probably get moving. Tamari gave a headshake. Actually no, one of us should stay here. If any enemies come then someone may be needed to protect these guys. I'll stay here, but the rest of you go on ahead. I'll make sure everyone else makes it back to Konoha and then come and find you. Despite his lingering suspicions about the siblings, Kakashi stated, all right, we're counting on you. He was prepared to put his trust in them for the time being. Move out. Tamari waited patiently until the medics felt comfortable enough to return the boys to the village, watching for any potential enemies. She was tapped on the shoulder by one of them. Miss, we're ready to go now. She concurred, saying, okay, let's get moving then. As the group of ninja approached the village, they became uneasy upon seeing another ninja waiting, particularly when he approached them. Miss, do you know Shino Aburame? I think you'll be able to wake one of them up, she said, gesturing behind her. No, but the boys on the backs of the medical nin do. Shikamaru was completely out of it, whether it was due to habit or pain. The man appeared to not want to do it, but he did it anyhow. Kiba had slightly greater success. On the first try, he stirred slightly and gave the man in front of him a slightly hazy glance. Do you know Shino Aburame? Kiba, who sounded a little out of it but much more alert now that he was learning about Shino, said, yay, he's my teammate. The shinobi nearly halted at the verdict's already wide and perceptive eyes, but he had to finish speaking and make the facts clear. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Shino Aburame's wounds were too severe. Shino Aburame died 15 minutes ago. Kiba had only a few seconds to react before the news and the strain of his injuries made him faint, and this time he wouldn't be so easily roused. Tamari was the first to move after the medical nin because she didn't know Shino well enough to be as saddened by his passing. The medics had to tend to the two injured ninja, so they fled almost instantly. After safely returning the injured to Konoha, Tamari left, concluding her work here. The loss of another ninja couldn't deter her. Ninjas died on a daily basis, and this time would be no exception. She then left to try to assist the others in completing their mission. Naruto stepped back from his opponent. Both of them had accumulated a fairly long list of injuries because they were more evenly matched than in the previous fight. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was in worse shape right now because Naruto could see the blood loss was affecting him and he already had a particularly nasty stomach wound to begin with. The ninja in black quickly scans his surroundings. Only 3 feet behind him was a cliff, and he realized why his opponent had been pressing so hard. He was pushing in the direction of the cliff, and even Naruto couldn't block or parry if he were falling. Jiraiya would be in charge of him. He had figured out Jiraiya's plan, but he was still bothered by something. Just something wasn't quite right. What exactly are you doing to pervert? Playing Jiraiya's game until the right time. Naruto retreated once more, but that time never arrived. He heard it as soon as he moved. It sounded almost like a snake slithering, and he said, "Sand. So you're here too, Shukaku." Gaara showed up. "Your plan failed. I will now do this my way." "Oh now, this will be interesting," Naruto said, smiling beneath his mask. He then turned to Jiraiya and said, "You just stay out of this. You'd only make our battle more difficult." As Naruto drew out a kunai, Gaara prepared his sand and said, "He is correct. You are injured, and would probably die if you became a part of our battle. Check on the other battle." He didn't dare dip this one in poison because he didn't want to risk missing his escape opportunity. Naruto taunted, "I see that Shukaku has hidden like a scared little rabbit down its hole." Gaara's psychotic behavior had significantly decreased. As a result, Naruto realized that Shukaku had withdrawn into the depths of the seal that held it to its Jinchuriki, at least temporarily. It would be logical. He reasoned that any tailed beast would immediately seek a rock to hide beneath and allow the emotion to subside before emerging again after encountering the 9 tails. The 1 tail wasn't particularly pleased with him or his tenant, though, and he suspected that when the Shukaku decided to come out, it would be more difficult to regain control. So, Foxy Kins, are you prepared to start this process? You know, attack Shukaku's host, and then maybe go on a rampage by the beach in a few weeks as retaliation? The fox was literally attempting to bite Naruto's head off, and he could almost feel it. The fox accepted the offer by lending some power even though he had never liked the moniker. If there was one thing he liked about the child, it was that he was able to make them both happy by winning his battles and then going on a rampage through some area, destroying a village or kingdom, possibly leveling a mountain, and other such simple things. Their agreement kept them on fairly stable terms, and this happened on a semi-regular basis, roughly every 6 months. For the two of them, at least, power plus destruction meant happiness. For those who stood in their way, not so much. "Alright then, Tomato Head, come at me." Gaara examined him to gauge the situation. There was an evil, tainted presence in the air, and something had changed. The presence was so familiar that he had previously been unable to recognize it. "You and I are alike." As he prepared to attack, Naruto clarified, "A little, except I'm on happy terms with my tailed beast. We keep each other mutually happy." As soon as he got close enough, he intended to release a burst of chakra. He had hoped Gaara would move first, but it appeared he was too smart, or afraid. Naruto didn't care and wasn't certain. When he charged, Gaara's sand immediately rose to shield his opponent, and Naruto had to avoid the sand spikes that came flying back. However, Naruto didn't stop because he hadn't been impaled yet, so he was free to continue. Naruto accumulated a mass of chakra on his right hand and stabbed through the sand wall as soon as he was within striking distance. As he had anticipated, he was able to locate his target by using the force and sheer will of the red chakra on his hand to separate the sand. He grazed his opponent, and there was a terrifying howl. It sounded something like what he had heard before except worse. Naruto suddenly had a feeling he had woken the true beast. Shukaku was angry, and even worse, he was angry at Naruto. Naruto was aware that he needed to wrap things up fast, unless he used more of Kyuubi's chakra, which he was certain would cause him to lose control and lead to the mission's failure should Sasuke be killed in the premature rampage. The Shukaku would probably crush him, literally. Fantastic. Naruto saw only one choice. He would allow the opposing team to destroy themselves. The black-clad ninja jumped over the edge of the cliff and stopped next to his charge. Sasuke had been holding his own against the two injured ninja, though he appeared a little worn out and was breathing a little more heavily than usual. "Sasuke, we're getting out of here." "Why, I'm not finished here." All 4 ninja had to dodge a huge sand spike that was dropped towards them from above in order to avoid being struck by a huge sand spear. "I may have pissed off Shukaku, and I'm pretty sure that if I went on a rampage here you'd die too. You are sort of my job to protect and get back to the village. It seems rather counterproductive to my goals, don't you think?" "Maybe, but I'm still not done battling them." "Oh yes, you were princess," Naruto said. He gave Jiraiya and Choji a cheeky wave before striking Sasuke in the back of the neck, pressing a particular pressure point, and knocking him unconscious. Well, maybe we'll meet again, if you survive, which you may. Tomato Head is putting up a rather good fight against the Shukaku. Almost seems like a shame not to even try and recruit him. Oh well. See ya! He screamed, fleeing and running up. But when he reached the summit, Jiraiya was already there. The man appeared severely injured, and Naruto was fairly certain that the wounds had been accumulating for days. As a result, he didn't appear to be able to do much damage. You aren't going anywhere. Naruto reached for a kunai and announced, "Move it, old man, or I'll make you." Jiraiya followed suit, but before they could move, a sudden, dense fog stopped Naruto and Jiraiya. Naruto crossed the border by stealthily slipping through the cover. Now he was safe. Haku was unconscious on Zabuza's back when he arrived. They paused for a minute to catch their breath before leaving the area before the mist had completely dissipated. That was getting too close. Yes. But luckily we all made it out. We should go towards Waterfall Country and find Urea and Inagu. Urea lowered herself into the trees and said, "No need, we got here a few minutes ago. We lost the girl though." After giving this some thought, Naruto concluded that it didn't really matter because they had Sasuke, who was the primary goal, so how could he be upset? He was traveling home from the Land of Sound. No worries, there was probably a mob after you. Urea held out her hand and said, "There was. So little brother, let's head home." After Naruto accepted it, she assisted him in standing up while Sasuke remained on his back. The six of them set out on their brief journey home. Tired but, for once, unwilling to go to sleep, Shikamaru sat on his bed. Just 6 days had passed since the mission was completed, and he was, to be completely honest with himself, depressed. He was alone because Choji and essentially everyone else were still in the hospital, and a number of other factors combined with his depression one after another to create a full-on episode that just wouldn't go away. Tenten, Temari, Kankuro, Gaara, Kakashi, and the medical staff, which included Shizune, were the only other members of the mission not bedridden. Kakashi had reportedly told him the story by the time they arrived at the Valley of the End Jiraiya, where Choji had been discovered unconscious and Gaara had only minor wounds. But those wounds had allowed enough extremely strong poison to enter his body to stop him. The boy was much more sane than when they last met because Tsunade had done some research in Gaara's mind and was able to literally stop the voice in his head. She had begun the task when he was in the village but had never had a chance to complete it. The previous day, the Sand siblings had departed. However, his depression was caused by more than just the fact that all of his friends were harmed. Shino had passed away. Shikamaru hadn't been able to take a nap since the funeral 3 days prior, and he hadn't been sleeping well at night either. For heaven's sake, he was a chunin. Even though there were a few elder and more senior ninja who had accompanied them, he had been the one in charge of the mission. He had been responsible for ensuring everyone's safety, and regardless of how he framed the situation, he ultimately came to the conclusion that he was to blame for Shino's death. He was aware that it was all on his head. How could he have been so unintelligent and distracted? Shino had been sent by him to follow Naruto. It had never occurred to him that his comrade would be killed by a bomb. Simply put, I was incredibly foolish, he scolded himself in his thoughts. The status of the mission itself had not even occurred to him. No, Shikamaru hadn't been able to think that far yet, nor had he considered whether he should give up on getting Naruto back and leave him alone. At the very least, he hadn't considered the possibility of doing so, because he was sure that he wouldn't be willing to leave him alone if he ran into one of his few childhood friends again. He was also far too dangerous to be left wandering around doing whatever he pleased. Shikamaru tried to calm himself for a moment, shaking off his thoughts. He was acting irrationally. Merely criticizing himself would not solve the problem. He started to consider his future plans a little more. He had no intention of ceasing to be a shinobi. To do so would only let Shino down. Shikamaru knew the other ninja well enough to feel sorrow, even though he hadn't known him well. Once more, he had a change of heart. He needed to get stronger, if only to locate Naruto and take him out of the game. At this point, his emotions and the recent events were gradually smothering the glimmer of hope that he still had to bring him back. The fact that they had managed to finish the mission partially, that Hinata Hyuga was still in the hospital recuperating from her battle with Kabuto, that a strong sedative had caused some memory loss, which was thought to be caused by the sedative, and that she had suffered a minor concussion were all positive aspects that his mind could not ignore. Though the majority of them were admittedly in the hospital, bruised, broken, scraped, and stabbed, both physically and, for some, mentally, tired, depressed, and generally hurt, Hinata was unable to cheer him up as much as the fact that everyone else on the mission had survived. However, they were all alive, and the doctors predicted that they would all get better. At least physically, he didn't think Kiba and Hinata in particular would find it easy to move on following the passing of their teammate. With a sigh, he made the decision that, for once, he wanted to train. He wanted to beat up something, probably a log, in the hopes that it would somehow help him feel a little better. It was 4 days ago. Sasuke, Zabuza, and Naruto made their way to this base's main room. This base did not have a grand throne room like some of the others, but rather a rather large office that bore a striking resemblance to the Hokage's office. There was even an absurd amount of paperwork in it. Geez, are you trying to imitate the cages? After surreptitiously searching the room for Naruto's head, a hand whacks it and turns back to its owner. Before leaving his current paper to look at Sasuke, the snake. Like man muttered something about having a cheeky smart mouth and a oversized ego. He got up and examined the genin closely. Although Orochimaru's close proximity seemed to unnerve Sasuke, he waited. When the inspection was finally finished, he returned to his desk. Naruto, take our friend to the spare room beside yours and then find Haku, Urea, Inagu, and the Sound 4 and come back to report on the mission. Have Kabuto raise the power of the seal to level 2 in the meantime. "K Dad, come on princess." Naruto turned and tried his hardest to drag Sasuke out as undignifiedly as he could, but the Uchiha prevented him from succeeding. They didn't have to go very far because they came to a set of doors at a dead-end hallway, which, in reality, had at least 10 escape routes. Naruto cautiously peered through each door before opening one. "All right princess, this is your room. You met Kabuto, right?" "Yeah, anyways, he's going to come in here later, and he'll explain a bunch of stuff you know. But I've got to go, so stay here." "Why should I take orders from you?" the blonde said, "Because I'm more powerful than you, and if you get lost in this place I'm not going to go on a wild Sasuke hunt. I'm going to report on the mission and go to bed." Sasuke's scowl was fiercer than usual because of his constantly escalating temper, the majority of which was brought on by a headache from lack of sleep. After seemingly considering his options for a moment, Sasuke nodded and closed the door. Feeling content that Sasuke would remain in his current position, Naruto went to his room and dropped off his cloak and mask, leaving him wearing a long, sleeved shirt, black pants, leg warmers, and boots. They had moved just before the exams and again while he was away. In between, there had been missions, and he just hadn't had time. He then went through his belongings to make sure everything had been grabbed during the last 2 moves. He had no idea where he had gotten it, but every time he saw or touched the small metal object with 5 charms, a leaf, a kunai, a bird, a shuriken, and a frog, it made him feel warm and comforted. The blonde meticulously and repeatedly checked his mental checklist when he realized that something was missing and thought, "My bracelet." It held great personal significance for him, and its loss not only irritated him but also made him feel a great deal of sadness. "But I guess I can't do anything about it now, I'll maybe go look later," he murmured. When Naruto finally located his silver-haired teammate sitting in a lounge area writing out some intricate-looking seal, he had left his room and wandered around a bit. "Hey Kabuto." The boy with the silver hair quickly rolled up the scroll and turned around, grinning. "Ah, Naruto, I'm glad to see you made it back safely," he replied. "Do you really have so little faith in me?" "Of course not, but as I'm sure you well know, those of Konoha can be rather vicious." "Yeah," Naruto said, dismissing the thoughts immediately. "Anyway, have you seen Haku, Urea, and Inagu recently? Sasuke is in the room next to mine, and Dad wants you to go and raise the level on his cursed seal." "I haven't seen them, however I'll go and do as was asked of me. If I should meet any of them though, where do they need to go?" "Dad's office, he wants to go over the mission." "All right then, I'll see you later Naruto. See you Kabuto." At yet another dead end, Naruto halted and snarled. There were only 3 normalcy that he detested about changing bases. The underground forest was always on the wall behind his dad's office. His room, his dad's room, and his sister's room were all close to the office, and the office was in the back of the base. Other than that, Exploration was the source of his knowledge about new bases. He was currently trying to locate the infirmary and check if at least one of the ninja that had been requested might be in a visible location. To be honest, after half an hour, he still hadn't located anyone. This is absurd. Where in the world is everyone? Really? He tossed a few sarcastic words around in his mind as he thought. At last, he recognized a face. Haku! He yelled as he ran toward her. Naruto! She exclaimed joyfully before turning and flinging her arms around him in a huge embrace. She had been unconscious during the journey home, and Kabuto had taken her straight to her room to get her well. She remarked, "You're all right," as she took a step back and discreetly examined the small patches of exposed skin for any injuries. Then, with caution, she moved her eyes over the black fabric that covered the rest of him until she focused on a hole in the sweater. Most people wouldn't notice it, but to her trained eye, which she developed from years of working with Naruto, it looked like a lit sign. Unable to find the strength to free the still injured girl from her hold on his arm as she pulled his sleeve up, Naruto questioned, Haku, what are you doing?" She squinted at the wound she discovered. Blood had formed a crust over it, but it was clearly still open. "You should be more careful." When he looked at the wound, he asked incoherently, "Nay?" It measured roughly 3 inches in length and half an inch in depth, but the pink lines that extended farther indicated that it had once been larger. He pondered, when did that happen, before shaking his head and wishing that the fox's chakra had had enough freedom to mend the remainder of his wounds. His ankle was okay, at least. Although he was aware that the fox's power was limited, Orochimaru and Kabuto had applied a second seal on top of the first one. This was done to slow the demonic chakra's natural flow into his system, improving chakra control and allowing him to more fully adapt to the power contained in the fox's chakra. They had concluded that although the flow rate had been set just a bit too high for him to manage, he was eventually supposed to be able to harness and use the Bijuu's power. The second seal had performed a miracle. He had learned how to use the clone right away, or more accurately, had been able to do so. His theory and form were accurate, he had just been unable to stop the massive flow of chakra that attacked him. As a result, his chakra attempted to create a solid clone but failed because he was not providing it with the necessary commands. Naturally, he was also capable of creating solid clones, and he had used this skill for training since each time a clone spread, it left him whatever it had learned. This allowed him to practice his taijutsu while 3 or 4 clones read through scrolls. He had used this to pick up bits and pieces of knowledge, sometimes whole subjects, that he doubted he would have learned if he had been kept in Konoha. Naturally, reading lessons from Kabuto and Jiraiya had been a part of this mental learning. Naruto returned to reality and resumed his quest. "Hey Haku, you know your way around here, right?" "Yes, I know where most of the important places are." "Alright, I'm looking for everyone else who got home with us. I already sent Kabuto off, but I'm missing Jiraiya and Inagu." "Well, they're probably somewhere around the mess hall." "Alright, lead the way Haku." Alright, even though he did like Inagu, Naruto didn't like that he was going to essentially steal all of his sister's attention from him, so after they had located the mess hall and he had scared the living daylights out of him, just because he felt like it, he went on to make fun of him. He was obviously fond of Inagu, but he had a tendency to make fun of and frighten the man whenever he could. Inagu handled it well, either yelling like a girl when the blonde unexpectedly appeared, retaliating with insults, or pulling pranks to catch Naruto whenever he could. They were fairly certain that there was a betting circle that would predict when the next string of pranks would occur, how frequently Naruto would frighten Inagu in a given day, week, month, year, etc., and other similar details. Someone swore and coughed up cash to another ninja as they were leaving the mess hall. The group made their way to the briefing at Orochimaru's office. Kabuto was just finishing up his report on Sasuke's cursed seal when they walked in. "He's very strong and should wake up in a couple of days." Orochimaru purred, "Perfect," before focusing on the ninja that had just arrived. "So, how did the mission go?"
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.